and having conversations with clients, and also to keep it. And what does that mean in 2026? In 2026 means it's not just using ChatGPT like it's Google. Get familiar with these AI tools. Managers, vice presidents, C-suite folks are looking for people to embrace these tools. Also, again, look at your side hustles where you may have other talents and skills. Now is the time to explore them. And lastly, do not take this as a joke. It is coming. It is going to get worse as far as the layoffs and them looking to, compress a lot of the hiring that they did during COVID. So take this very seriously, learn what you can, ask questions, but just use it. And I think if you get familiar with it, you'll be able to add value in your workplace and then, essentially become indispensable.
Tyrone, such great insight. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, that was FA Corner, brought to you by Capital Group. Thanks so much. And that's it for Market Catalyst. I'm Brooke DePalma. Thanks for watching. More for Yahoo Finance straight ahead.
Eon 應援大租戶，任何人生大計都由我哋幫你。Eon 私人貸款申請簡易，特快批核，為你速借速決。有 Eon 手機 App 24/7應援大租戶，仲有各區分行隨時應援。有 Eon 應援大租戶，成功申請仲送高達12,000蚊回贈。Eon 信貸財務，中谷借錢跟英文，咪俾錢中介。
中華知識王翻嚟啦！
中華文明5000年，咁多知識，你真係識？
新一輯明星運動員齊玩，
一個超乎你想象嘅問答比賽。
中華知識王
2。
太醫電蟲草王星期3出位價低至170.6，快啲嚟萬寧買啦！
各位小鄰居 ，Harry 哥哥同埋一班好朋友去到校園幫助小鄰居解決心事，仲有貓頭鷹博士，佢會用基本法解釋大家嘅權利同義務。我哋又點樣喺基本法入邊揾到答案呢？好鄰居齊學基本法校園 special。
直路嘅 Pros 見櫻花系列啦，佢嘅香味清甜得嚟，唔會太濃稠，加入咗高濃度保濕因子同埋乳霜質地，用佢嚟沖涼咧，一次過做到潔淨滋潤嘅效果。仲要用埋佢哋同款櫻花潔手液，添加咗透明質酸，洗完對手一啲都唔乾。
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want, and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. From tools built for one, to platforms ready for many. From passion projects to enterprise-grade systems. Everything is built in and ready to launch. It's a new world of creation, where you can go as far as your imagination takes you. Can you imagine it? Let's make your dream a reality, right now.
Okay, there is so much space discussion happening right now. First, let's start with SpaceX. It's seeking the biggest IPO that we have ever seen, the biggest valuation. What do you make of it? Because what do you make of the interest in this company? Because people might think of it and think, okay, it's just a rocket company, but it's really not just that anymore.
Yeah. We think this is a Netscape moment for the space economy in the same way that prior to Netscape going public in '95, the internet was this thing that academics and like government employees used. It became an institutional grade asset class after that. And a lot of capital flooded to the area, gave institutional investors a liquid asset to benchmark against. I think the same thing is happening here with SpaceX. I think it is, the IPO is prompting allocators to reconsider just how large and strategically important the space economy has become. Right. I mean, most people think of it as the Apollo moon landings, the International Space Station, right? But it's so much more than that. If you think about GPS, it is the invisible backbone that powers the global economy. Mm-hmm. The global economy runs on infrastructure that's in orbit, that is increasingly converging with terrestrial infrastructure to provide us with new products and services that
like
weren't
Starlink as part of that and all
exactly.
and other things. When you think about the timing of this IPO, there's a lot of poly-market odds out there, many expecting that this could go public by June 15th or June 30th. What's your take? When will we see this company go public?
Well, the company and the founder have dropped some hints, and so
founder being Elon Musk.
Yes, he said that it's when Venus and Mercury align, which is early June. You know, Bloomberg reported that they filed confidentially yesterday. So that I think it's been a lot of talk and speculation and expectation, but like that makes it real, right? And it kind of puts them right on track for that timeline.
What does this sort of mean for the broader space economy? I know that you sort of hit on that, but where exactly can investors think of places to go? Maybe they want to get in ahead of that IPO. What are some ETFs you're looking at? What are some other companies that you're looking at?
Yeah, so I'm not sure that any ETF currently captures the breadth of the opportunity as we see it. Again, it's if you think about GPS, you've got satellites that are in orbit generating this really valuable signal. But it was off limits to anyone by design until Trimble created commercial GPS receivers that gave the world access to this really valuable positioning data from orbit that is now powering the global economy. Trimble is a pure play. They are very much in the GPS game, providing that positioning data for construction and AEC industries, so that's an interesting one. EchoStar sold a bunch of spectrum to SpaceX. They own SpaceX shares, which is now generating many billions of dollars for them. Google invested into SpaceX back in 2015.
Right, many people don't know that Google actually could benefit from this IPO.
Yeah, they put $1 billion, almost $1 billion into the company back in 2015, which is like at this price somewhere around like 150 today, which is still small in terms of Google overall. But those are some opportunities to get involved early. There are more companies that are going public that are more pure plays on the infrastructure side, launch companies, satellite companies, and we're going to see more of those. I think on the heels of this SpaceX IPO, I mean, there's going to be many companies, I think, that are going to look to go public and draft behind the giant now that they've set this new benchmark.
Yeah, EchoStar shares up more than 370% over the past year. But to take a step back, we did have a major launch yesterday. Artemis 2 was one of the first lunar missions that we've had in the past 50 years. One, what do you make of this mission? Will we actually see this happen by 2028, landing on the moon again? And is this sort of the last opportunity, like you were saying before, for government agencies to ultimately go into space versus maybe what we've seen from private companies? Is this sort of NASA's last push before private sector takes over?
So the new NASA administrator has come in, and he's been on the job for about 100 days, and he really, in Q1, set to put his imprint on the agency. So he's really come in and reset the culture at NASA. He's classified the earlier 2024 Boeing Starliner incident as a class, as a high-class incident, which puts it on par with the Columbia shuttle tragedy. So they are. They're taking this very seriously. He's calling it, he's putting transparency into the agency, and he's renegotiating the agency's contracts with legacy contractors. And so now they're really looking to benefit from partnering with new companies with new capabilities like SpaceX and Blue Origin. So.
Right, which did have a part within Artemis too.
So the SLS rocket was built by Boeing. That launched yesterday. Super exciting. They're now in Earth orbit, and before they're going to, this evening, do a translunar injection to the moon, go out past the moon, go farther than humans have ever gone, and then come back to the Earth a little over a week later, right?
Yeah.
The next Artemis 3 mission, and they're testing a whole bunch of technologies and how humans interact with these environments. The next Artemis 3 mission is going to be that vehicle going up into Earth orbit, docking with one of these SpaceX or Blue Origin vehicles to then take it to the moon in the Artemis 4 mission. So that's over the next couple of years. The next 5 years with this Artemis program are going to be incredibly exciting as the new administrator pushes us to build a moon base where there's a lot of robots there that are doing a lot of the work, working alongside humans to develop a permanent presence there.
And it'll only be a matter of time before we go to Mars.
That's right.
All right, Chad, I'm banking on that. Fingers crossed.
評測報告同媽媽谷都推薦 CP 值夠晒高。
廣告涼茶對症下藥，推廣良方。
個市一時話紅，一時話牛，點睇通透？
消息話呢個係最低價，要大手掃貨，定睬佢都傻。
有 Endowus 智安投，投資更清晰，機構級投資策略，中立理財建議，透明低收費。Endowus 智安投。
Joining us now is Tyrone Ross Jr., principal and founder at 401 Financial, for this week's FA Corner, brought to you by Capital Group. Tyrone, walk us through how exactly you should be repositioning your budget right now. It seems like these higher prices are not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing that we're encouraging clients to do, and I encourage everyone to do watching, is look back 3 months of your checking account, look at your spending, revisit your budget, see where you're spending the majority of your money. Yes, it's going to be very clear that the prices of things in the grocery store have gone up, but what that'll also illuminate is where you may be spending money that you can reel back now that things are getting a lot more expensive, and with other macro things happening in the economy, how you could position yourself to have a little bit of a safety net moving forward.
One of the things you talk about a lot is investments in cryptocurrency. We did see Bitcoin have a horrible first quarter, to say the least. It was one of the worst performing first quarters since 2018. How do you sort of preserve your value when it comes to this cryptocurrency asset?
I think the first thing, and I've been saying this for years, is just a long-term mindset. I think when you buy the ticket to get on the Bitcoin or crypto asset roller coaster, it's just going to go up and down. You should have a long-term time horizon. It shouldn't be capital that you have in crypto assets right now that you rely on, that you need to buy groceries or pay your rent. That should just be very risky capital that you term bet on the future. So I think if you are heavily invested, I'll raise my hand, you want to have a plan around that, but you also want to make sure that it is capital, as funds that you don't need in the near or medium term. It's a long-term bet, and you should treat it as such.
Tyrone, what's so interesting now is this sort of becoming mainstream. We know that Fannie Mae will now accept crypto-backed asset mortgages or crypto-backed mortgages. What if someone has been planning for maybe, the past 10 years and now they think, okay, I'm going to use this to now put a down payment on a house. Now, all of a sudden, it went from $126,000 to now we're hovering around the $60,000 to $70,000. What's your best advice to maybe that person who thought this was for the long term and this was the time I was going to use it?
Yeah, so to be very clear, I'm the biggest crypto hippie you will ever have on this show. But when I saw that news, I wasn't excited by that. Now, Coinbase and Fannie Mae and who I think is another company involved saying that no matter how low the crypto gets, it won't be an issue. It's only if you don't make the payments for 90 days. I'm not sure I put a lot of value into that. I don't think crypto should be used for mortgages, but if you have a plan around it, you've held it a long time, and other parts of your financial life are secure, sure. Because there are a lot of folks that were in the space early. They do have a lot of their assets in crypto, but ideally you do it the traditional way, try to find a way to get 15 to 20% down. And if your crypto is a part of that, Bitcoin preferably is great. But I mean, to settle on a 30-year mortgage and then have that backed by a very volatile asset is not something I would advise. But it can
for the month of March. Then at the same time, we heard from Challenger Grand Christmas this morning that in the month of March, about 25% of total cuts were actually because of artificial intelligence. What are you telling clients right now on how to best prepare for this job market where AI is so impactful?
Yeah, I'm living it as a CEO myself and having conversations with clients and also with just folks generally. One, if you do have a job right now, do everything in your power to keep it. And what does that mean in 2026? In 2026, means it's not just using ChatGPT like it's Google. Get familiar with these AI tools. Managers, vice presidents, C-suite folks are looking for people to embrace these tools. Also, again, look at your side hustles where you may have other talents and skills. Now is the time to explore them. And lastly, do not take this as a joke. It is coming. It is going to get worse as far as the layoffs and them looking to, compress a lot of the hiring that they did during COVID. So take this very seriously, learn what you can, ask questions, but just use it. And I think if you get familiar with it, you'll be able to add value in your workplace and then, essentially become indispensable.
Tyrone, such great insight. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, that was FA Corner brought to you by Capital Group.
Want to make sure you know about all the possible deductions you could be taking. Join me now as part of our Write It Off or Nice Try segment presented by H&R Block is Dan Geltrude, the founder and CEO of Geltrude & Company. Let's start here, Dan. Simple. What's the difference, walk us through this, between a tax deduction and a credit?
維達 4D Deluxe Snoopy 限定版登場，迷你裝紙手巾，印滿可愛印花圖案，袋裝面紙，觸感綿柔，仲有掛牆式設計，抽取更方便。維達連續8年全球銷量No.1。
Whoa, what's that? I just built a budgeting app with Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app. But if you have a $100 tax credit, you actually lower the tax by $100. So a tax credit is much better than a tax deduction.
A big headline from last year, Dan, was the boost to the SALT reduction cap. How do taxpayers, they're listening right now, how do they know, Dan, if they should be taking these SALT deductions?
Well, this was a real political hot potato, right? So, yes, the SALT deduction was raised to $40,000. That's up from $10,000. Now, how do you know you qualify? Well, you have to be able to itemize your deductions to be able to qualify for that. Because remember, you get the benefit of the higher of your standard deduction versus your itemized deduction. So the SALT deduction falls into itemizing. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And again, that cap is up to $40,000 for tax year 2025.
So just to pull on that thread, Dan, what kind of things can be itemized for SALT deductions?
So SALT stands for state and local taxes. So here's how it works. That covers property taxes and your state income tax or sales tax. So it's one or the other related to your state income tax or the amount of sales tax that you paid within that tax year.
A lot of folks, Dan, listening right now, they may not know they can write off student loan payments. Walk us through how that works.
So what's deductible related to student loans, and this is important to keep in mind, it's only the interest on those payments, right? It is not the principal. So it's not as big of a deduction as you may think. And you also have income limits that apply. So yes, it's there. It's a good thing, but it may not be as much as you think it is based upon how much you paid versus what portion of that was interest.
For sports bettors out there, I'm sure we got plenty listening right now, Dan, can gambling losses offer a tax break?
Actually, they can. So the way the rule is right now in terms of for your 2025 tax year, you get to offset your gambling wins and your gambling losses. So in effect, you can zero your gambling wins out. However, going into next year, or meaning next tax year, meaning 2026, that gets limited to only 90% of your losses are allowed. So you could actually end up with a situation where you've made no money, but you still owe tax.
What about dividends that are reinvested, Dan? Can you write that off?
Well, the big question there is related to whether the reinvestment of dividends can be deducted. So reinvested dividends are not deductible. Now, people think, well, I didn't get any cash, so why should I have to pay any tax on it? Well, they're still considered earnings, and what they do is so you pay tax on those reinvested dividends, but what they do is they increase your cost basis so that when you sell those investments, it does lower your capital gains.
Dan, as always, great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
用恒生靚雀卡食勻多重菜式，限時擊上20萬 U 積分。
太醫電蟲草王星期3出位價低至170個6，快啲嚟萬寧買啦！
更年期健康需要進階護理，全新善全更年期管理組合，精選成分，臨床實證，有效舒緩多種更年期不適。
We've reached the final 8 of Yahoo Finance's Market Madness. This is our stock market bracket as a nod to March Madness. We've seen dominant performances and major upsets. Let's focus on 2 key matchups today. On the right side of the bracket, that's our morning bracket, Bob Lang, technical analyst at Explosive Options, joins me now for Market Madness, brought to you by Everpure. Sort of break down for this, Bob. Let's start with the 2 that we're up against. The first bracket here, we have JP Morgan up against Amazon. What's your pick? Who's winning this game and why?
I'm going to call Amazon here, Brooke.
Okay.
Great to see you. I really like Amazon here. This is a stock that has fallen back sharply over the past couple of months. It's one of the Mag 7 names, and it has performed rather poorly since earnings came out in late January, Brooke. But I think that the stock is building a nice base down here, just above $200, between $200 and $220. I think that if we get above that $220 level, Brooke, all bets are off to the upside, and I think the all-time high, at about $255, $260. Are going to come into view. But, I like the growth engine for AWS that Amazon has. It's a strong moat for the company. It's been the best performer of all of the names that do cloud computing. And, listen, after a substantial correction, this company is going to thrive in an environment whether we get into a slowdown in the economy or not.
Right, and we also just heard that Amazon's teaming up with Delta for high-speed internet, so lots of potential opportunities for Amazon to really ramp up. But I have to ask, Bob, why aren't we choosing JP Morgan here?
Well, JP Morgan, the thing that worries me about the large banks over here, and it's not just JP Morgan, but it's also Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley. All these names are going to have a little bit more of a difficult time when it comes to running their business, especially with interest rates starting to move back up. I know that interest margin has also become a good driver for profitability for these companies, but with a flatter yield curve, Brooke, which is what we've been facing here over the past 3 weeks or so.
Right.
I think that this company is going to have some challenges. Certainly, loan growth has been slowing down. They said that over the last quarter or two. And then also, mortgage lending has not been as strong as people have been expecting. Home building is starting to slow down. And again, this is a catalyst that could move well for them if interest rates start coming down, but that's not been the case.
Bob, okay, let's get to our next matchup. This one's interesting. It's the big arches versus a crypto exchange. We're talking McDonald's versus Coinbase. Where's your pick here? Both very different companies, especially in this environment.
Very different, Brooke. That's true. But I like the golden arches here. I like McDonald's here, and really, it's just a chart read from my point of view. Several times over the past 7 to 8 months, the stock has come down to the 200-day moving average. It just penetrated it a little bit today, came down and tested it yesterday on April 1st. Every single time that it comes back down to test that 200-day moving average, Brooke, it's been a powerful spring for the stock to move back up. So I'm betting that 8th or 9th time. Listen, I don't need more than 2 or 3 times to recognize that there's a good pattern there in the chart. But I think that bouncing up this 200-day moving average here, Brooke, the stock's trading at about 305, 306 right now. I think we had a good run up to 330 to 340. We've also seen some good options flow in the June 320 and 340 calls on the upside. Very brisk buying action over there. So that would be about a 5 to 10% move up, which would be very strong for a company like McDonald's. So I like McDonald's here over Coinbase.
And Bob, today we did get that announcement from the big arches that they're launching a under $3 menu, a $4 breakfast meal deal, adding that to the big value menu. Also, what has you sort of excited maybe about how AI could play into fast food?
I think that companies like McDonald's and Chipotle in the restaurant business are exploring ways to cut costs. And I think AI is a direct result of some investments from these companies into helping them cut costs, cutting salary, cutting wages, and so forth. I know that's not good for the job market, but still, for the bottom line, for the investor, earnings are going to improve if they can figure out some sort of way to incorporate AI in their everyday business. I think that certainly with services and I don't think AI is actually going to be flipping burgers for them, Brooke. But I do think that there is a way for them to use the tools to help slim down their costs and bring it to the bottom line.
Yeah, we got that Challenger report out this morning saying that AI did impact layoffs. Quickly, just play devil's advocate here once again. Coinbase, it's already down 20% year to date. You seem like you're knocking on it even further. I mean, what do you make of Coinbase, and what do you make of this environment hitting cryptocurrency even larger right now?
You know, I'm a little surprised that after Bitcoin broke that 78,000 level, it hasn't recovered enough to recapture that. So we could be entering into a very, very long basing period for Bitcoin. We know that Coinbase is very highly correlated with Bitcoin and some of these other cryptocurrencies here. So I think what we're looking at here, Brooke, for Coinbase is more of a long-term basing period. It could be 2 months, 3 months, 6 months out, where the stock just really remains range bound here. And we're talking from about 140 to the downside and maybe 200 to the upside. And that's quite a range. 140 to 200 is quite large. It's about a 30% range. But I think that the upside here is capped around the $200 level unless Bitcoin can make a run above that $78,000 to $80,000 level, and then we might be able to see some upside with Coinbase. But for now, I think a good long basing period is going to be best for Coinbase before it moves up. The best year for Coinbase probably could be in 2027, which I think that crypto, Bitcoin especially, is going to be making a breakout.
All right, Bob Lang, no pressure here, but Amazon and McDonald's are going to the next round because of you. Thanks so much for taking the time and for playing Market Madness with us.
Thanks, Brooke. Good to see you.
維達 4D Deluxe Snoopy 限定版登場，迷你裝紙手巾，印滿可愛印花圖案，袋裝面紙，觸感綿柔，仲有掛牆式設計，抽取更方便。維達連續8年全球銷量No.1。
You, just you, building your app on base 44. Describe it. And it's real. One thought leads to more thoughts. Layer by layer, taking shape. When you need your tools, bring them in. They just click. Okay, kick it up a notch. Create something smarter, something powerful. Style counts, so give it your touch. Big or small. Next idea hits at 2 a.m. Of course it does. Keep building. Ask yourself, wait, I built this? Damn right. Base 44. Build it your way.
the FDA approving Eli Lilly's GLP-1 pill. What did you make of that news? An oral option, Hallie.
Yeah. Well, obviously, this has come after Novo's Wegovy pill, which has been on the market now for a month and also quite successful. So I think the more options that we have for folks that are effective, safe weight loss options, to me, is a good thing.
Do you think does it aggressively sort of expand the market, Hallie? Are there a lot of people, for example, taking the shot right now, taking the jab, who are thinking, you know what, man, that pill sounds like a better option?
Absolutely. And in fact, Josh, a lot of men are afraid of taking shots on a weekly basis. And so this is a great option for those who are maybe afraid of needles. But it's also a great option for folks who maybe travel a lot, because the injection requires refrigeration. As we know, the pill does not. So it is a lot more accessible. Again, more options. It helps people find something that works for them, and it helps bring down prices.
Hallie, here's another headline, kind of a big trend in your space that the Journal highlighted. I don't know if you saw this one. They talk about how big drug makers, they say, on the deal hunt aren't opening their wallets as wide as they used to. They say the industry's latest acquisitions, well below $10 billion, reflect a more tight-fisted approach to deal making than previous periods. What did you make of that? Was that a sign of discipline, Hallie? Maybe less confidence on making big bets? How did you interpret it?
Yeah, well, I actually track M&A within digital health. So any sort of healthcare company that has like a software component. And this year has been rather quiet. We have seen 4 kind of notable acquisitions over $100 million. Interestingly enough, 2 of them were acquisitions of companies abroad. So these are Hims & Hers, which acquired Australian-based Eucalyptus for over $1 billion, and Sword Health, which acquired German-based Kaya Health for $285 million, and Kaya Health is based in Europe, so really trying to expand to that demographic. So it's interesting to see that these acquisitions that are happening aren't necessarily happening for the technology as much as for a customer base in a new geo.
Hallie, let's say I'm an investor and I'm listening to this. I'm like, I want to try to place a bet, a smart bet on a future acquisition target in your healthcare space. I'm curious, what would you be sort of watching and monitoring? Like, what would be the variables, Hallie? Like, would it be like pipeline quality or milestones? Maybe big fancy partnerships. What would you be on your radar?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is growth. And has this company been able to show that they're growing year over year, able to acquire new customers while keeping existing customers? I would look at their unit economics. Is this a company that is sound, that's building something that is long lasting and sustainable? And then I think, as you said, like partnerships, that sort of signaling that this company is able to reach out and partner across the board is really critical as well. But at the end of the day, it comes down to numbers.
Another topic, the role of healthcare. Let's go back to Eli Lilly, because they made news for another reason. Sticking with them, they reached this deal with Insilico to bring AI-developed drugs to market, Hallie. I guess, is this, when you hear about something like that, do you see that as, hey, that is a real potential sweet spot for AI, drug discovery?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when biotech is looking at AI for drug discovery, it's really just the beginning. We have everything from the way drugs are discovered, marketed, manufactured, that AI can really play a role. And we're actually seeing this from the VC's perspective. So we went from 37% of VC dollars in digital health going towards AI-enabled companies in 2024 to over half last year. And 2026 will undoubtedly be even higher, because these companies are they're taking front stage. They're getting customers. They have real traction, and VCs want to be part of it.
Finally, Hallie, we had another piece of news this week. Whoop, I don't know if you saw this. So, of course, the wearable device company, right? I think calls itself the Human Performance Company. They raised $575 million. That was a $10.1 billion valuation. What did you make of that news, Hallie? What did it sort of tell you about appetite and demand in that wearable space?
Yeah, I mean, Aura is their biggest competitor, and obviously Aura has also raised a considerable amount of money at a high valuation. This kind of goes back to what I was saying about GLP-1s. More products, more service, more competition. That keeps both the quality up, because these companies have to compete for customers, and it keeps the prices down. And hopefully we'll see more affordable options, because we now have more funding going towards this innovation. And hopefully we'll be able to spread this to more people, because still right now these products are several hundreds of dollars. So they're not accessible to many Americans. My hope is that by having these companies grow and get funded, that they'll be able to have new product offerings, bring down costs, and make it just more accessible for all. I'm always very pro-competition.
All right, Hallie, great to have you on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Big dreams start small. At GoDaddy, we help you take that first step and every step after. From getting your domain to creating your website, email, and online security, we've got you covered. You don't need to be a tech expert. You just need a starting point. GoDaddy gives you the tools, the expert support, and the push to make it real. Your brand starts here with GoDaddy.
Hyundai is debuting a new vehicle at the New York Auto Show. It's called the Boulder Concept, the company's new off-road SUV set to launch in 2030. And Yahoo Finance's Praz Sumeranian spoke to Hyundai North America's CEO on the new car and its outlook for the road ahead. Take a listen.
This basically gives you a really good indication of our design direction for the future. So body on frame.
做生意最緊要就係講信用。做老闆會選擇 Air Wallet 嘅信用卡。
Good question. So 5 for 5, 5 years of
Stories that set your agenda.
Taking you from the U.S. markets close. Live from our European headquarters, we bring you the day's top market moving stories, unmatched expert analysis, and on-the-ground reporting from across the
Are we looking for relationships with AIs because we're no longer really there for each other? Has technology made it too easy to cancel on people, send a quick text instead of really engaging when a friend or family member has a problem? Maybe we're looking for that reliability in AIs because we can no longer get it from each other.
I'm a Snapchat influencer. I am also an entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 14 years old, and I pull over 1 billion views a month on Snapchat.
I heard you started posting when you were 13.
Yeah, 13 years old. I actually started posting YouTube videos when I was 9. I've just always been in love with the idea of creating content, like having an idea and bringing it to life. I receive over 300,000 comments a day.
A day?
A day. So I'm constantly trying to respond back to fans. Hey Karen, my name is Ron. Hi Ron, how are you? Aww. Hello, my majestic queen. Hello.
You actually talk.
You did. Karen AI is something that I felt could bridge the gap between me and my fan base. With all those responses on Snapchat, 300,000 replies a day, it's just not humanly possible for me to respond back to every single
It never has cheap gas, and especially if you live in the New York Metro or you live right outside the city.
I thought the gas
cheaper.
used to be
It's cheaper than Westchester.
Okay. All right, but that's real money. Like
Yes.
And then I keep thinking about.
Was he filling up other people's cars?
No, it's just our
Just
car.
that was one car?
Man.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the rest of 2026, and maybe I'm silly to even think about that. Eric, how do you think about the markets for this year? Like, is there a point where you're like, okay, these are kind of the trends. There's some really big macro things coming at us, or is there still too many questions to figure out what the second half of 2026 looks like?
Well, I think you have to put in context where we've come from. So if you look at the market right now, we are below where we were at the start of the fourth quarter last year. So for 6 months, we've basically gone nowhere, or slightly down. So there is a lot of room to pick up if you are looking at the broader economic situation, which is that, when we came into the year, people were concerned about growth, people were concerned about spending, but so far retail spending is holding up. So far growth looks okay. So the real risk is what's going on in Iran. And that's kind of like overhanging everything. And the idea that we would know what's going to happen over the next 9 months, not just in the war, but in the pricing, in the supply chains, so much is up in the air that right now, I mean, the market's kind of going sideways. And then you look at the reaction to headlines, and it's extraordinarily jumpy on headlines. So news, one way or another, is driving things. And that's been the most interesting part to me, has been the way that the market has responded to Trump and not really responded to Iran. So, Trump will come out and say, we're close to peace or whatever. And then Iran will come out and go, what are you talking about? And everybody listens to him, and they're not listening to Iran. Now, both, are not exactly places that you want to go and, put your money down on. But it's been interesting to see how trigger happy the market's been every single time Trump says something. That's been different this week. So like today, Tim was pointing out, oil is holding up. Bond yields aren't really, I mean, we're down, we held below 4.3, have 4.4, we're in around 4.3, but it's not like big moves. And, oil is still very, very high. And so eventually this is the kind of thing that either has to get fixed or has to, be reflected in stocks.
Yeah, I'm just looking too at the VIX. Again, whether people care or not care, but I'm just looking at today. We were up almost at 28 at our low, down at 23, and that's kind of where we closed. And if you look even over the week overall, we at one point were almost at 32, I think, at the high. I mean, it's a jumpy market, right? And it's just sensitive. And I kind of get it, right? Because these headlines. But is it, Eric, we've talked about, I think it was with you, about equities kind of constantly looking for, or maybe it's some guests, looking for a reason to rally.
Well, not always, but right now that does feel like what's going on. And it's been this market all along. I mean, to go back to the old horse, AI spending had two sides of it. There was the growth of what AI was going to cause. And then there was also the idea that like these guys are going to spend a lot of money and that's a big risk. And the market didn't punish the risk. It bought the risk. So there's kind of this bias toward believing that growth is going to come and that, things will work themselves out. We're in a very different place, though, when you're talking about Iran, you're talking about supply chains, you're talking about the Straits of Hormuz. And that's, where being a forward-looking mechanism, it's dangerous.
I think that's why, we have to look forward to earnings. And that's why I think it's going to be so essential, Eric. And I see you're nodding here about what we hear from companies, because, if consumers are spending more on gas, what are they buying less of? And is that going to be the theme for the first quarter of the year?
We've been talking about that actually on our desk because we saw the retail sales numbers coming in. And so it looks like this might be a good quarter, but everybody is going to be focused on what they talk about in terms of the outlooks. And it's because of what they see from supply chains and spending as prices go up. If the assumption is that oil is going to stay elevated for a little while, things get more expensive, and that gets that eats into what people will spend, what people will buy. It also eats into the inputs at various different companies and things like that. So it just has this filtering effect. And so all of these comments are going to be extremely important. And that's really where the forward outlook will come.
Right.
When analysts start asking these big corporate executives, how are you looking at the second half of the year? And that's really when we'll get the idea.
We can't wait to hear it. Hey, have a great weekend. Eric Weiner, Bloomberg News Senior Editor, Equities Americas.
It's 4:20 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Turned out to be an up day for the S&P 500 index, a 7-point gain up by 0.1%. Got to keep in mind that in the early going, the S&P was down 1.5%, clawed back, ending with a gain of 0.1%. The Dow did close lower, down 0.1%, but the S&P wraps up the week, heading into a long holiday weekend for a lot of people at 65.82. NASDAQ today had a gain of 0.2%. The Russell 2000 index, small cap shares rallying up by 0.7%. All of this now with the VIX below 24, the 10-year 4.30%, but the 2-year 3.80%. Gold down $92 the ounce, down 1.9%, 46.66 on the precious metal. West Texas Intermediate crude 111.66 a barrel, up 11.5%. Barrel of Brent 108.75. Brent crude up today by 7.5%. Bitcoin 66,920, down 1.8%. Amazon will start charging sellers who use its shipping services a 3.5% fuel and logistics surcharge later this month. And sources tell Bloomberg SpaceX has boosted its target IPO valuation above $2 trillion as the world's most valuable startup gears up to pitch potentially the biggest ever market debut. Recapping, S&P up 0.1%. West Texas Intermediate crude 111.70 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. Carol and Tim, that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks for that update, Charlie Pellet. As we've been covering all day, Attorney General Pam Bondi leaving her post at the end of excuse me, let me try that again.
It's been a lot.
You and I were just talking about how there's a lot coming at us, so I can't even read. I can even read what I wrote. Well, to be fair, what I copied and pasted from our Bloomberg News colleagues.
That's okay. Listen, when they write it so wonderfully, why would you redo it?
Attorney General Pam Bondi is leaving her post at the head of the U.S. Justice Department. It ends a tumultuous tenure as the nation's top law enforcement official after some high-profile stumbling blocks in her efforts to carry out President Trump's agenda. She was viewed as one of the president's most loyal allies. However, President Trump grew impatient with her over the lack of progress in prosecutions that he had demanded against his adversaries, in addition to her handling of the files related to cases involving the late disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein.
So let's get to it. We're so grateful to have back with us Jason Leopold. He's Bloomberg News senior investigative reporter, author of the FOIA Files newsletter. Comes out each and every Friday. You can find it on the Bloomberg terminal or just head to bloomberg.com/newsletters. Jason joining us on this Thursday. He also hosts the podcast Disclosure, so highly recommend you check it out. He's out there on the West Coast. Good to be talking with you again.
You too.
You know, the Pam Bondi news crossing the Bloomberg terminal, I think maybe not a complete surprise, but I'm just curious how you are thinking about it when it did cross, and maybe what it means if Todd Blanche is running it, or who's the other person?
Maybe Lee Zeldin.
Lee Zeldin.
Maybe. That's been, the New York Times reported that yesterday.
And what it might mean for the Epstein files and the release of them.
Sure. I mean, to me, it was a surprise, even though the rumors had been out there, for some time. And I mean, yesterday there seemed to be a number of stories that were published saying that this was imminent, and here we are. Immediately for me, though, I go back to last February, February of 2025, and anything that relates or that's being reported that Trump being frustrated or over the handling of the Epstein files, you have to go back to February 2025 when Bondi invited a bunch of right-wing provocateurs to the White House, handed them binders that said Epstein Files Phase 1, the most transparent administration in history. And this was supposed to be the first rollout, first wave of release of Epstein files. And that completely backfired because those files had been previously released. So that just started, or that was the start of a pretty vicious social media campaign targeting Bondi over, the handling of this. They then went through, when I say they, Bondi's office and the FBI then went through, 3 or 4 month review of the Epstein files. And as we reported, and what happened in July of 2025, the Justice Department and FBI released a joint statement saying that they weren't going to release anything after they had reviewed all these records. So that just blew up in the Justice Department's face, and Trump was constantly asked about it. And then you have the Epstein Files Transparency Act that was passed, and what happened after that, there was just a lot of infighting, and the fact that names of victims were released, not all the records were released. A lot of back and forth between the congressional oversight committees, and Bondi. Bondi was just recently, if I'm not mistaken, subpoenaed, or threatened to be subpoenaed, over the Epstein file. So it wasn't really dying down,
But I don't. But I just want to jump in, Jason, because of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Weren't her hands kind of tied in terms of what she, as the Justice Department head, could withhold? Like, it didn't matter who was in there.
Right. No, that is definitely true, and it's also, a point of contention by members of Congress and the Justice Department, because they were saying, or alleging that she was being way too aggressive in terms of what was, or the Justice Department under her oversight was being way too aggressive in terms of what they were withholding, and that they were not adhering to what the law dictated. And by the way, there's millions of pages of records that still have not been released. So that has been playing out back and forth, in various letters, calls for investigations, court action. And so it was not something that, or seemed that it would go away. And so Trump had been really frustrated over that because, he wanted it to go away.
Yeah, you're right. I think there was a deposition scheduled for April 14th, right? And we've, I think after she was talking to committee hearings. So, forgive me, because I was just trying to clarify on that. So forgive me if you've already answered this. But so are you expecting, Jason, that we will get more in terms of the Epstein files with a change, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I don't think that is, it does not seem like that is going to happen, but fighting is going to continue, as it relates to the Justice Department's handling of it, right? So it was the Justice Department's handling of it under Bondi, and whoever replaces Bondi, we have Todd Blanche as, the Deputy Attorney General as interim, is going to inherit that. That's the thing. It's like, this isn't going to go away.
So then, okay. And look, bear with me, because this is developing. We don't know we know that Todd Blanche will be acting AG, but what is he then responsible for? And kind of to build on Carol's question, what is then he responsible for when it comes to your world and making sure that we, as a public, Jason, are getting what the Epstein Transparency Act promised we'd get?
Yeah. Well, part of it is ensuring that all the records that, Congress, or that the law that was passed by Congress says that the Justice Department and FBI need to release are actually released. That has been part of a big part of the infighting. In addition to that, there are lots of questions about why the Justice Department under previous administrations or U.S. Attorney's offices did not further pursue potential co-conspirators. So the Justice Department is sort of caught in having to make sure that their records are still being redacted, and they're in accordance with the law. And protecting victims' identities. And so they're continuously working on that. But then there, is the big question is everything released? And, if you listen to some of the lawmakers, Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna, who, spearheaded this effort, they say no. And so they've turned to, another agency, the Government Accountability Office, to investigate the Justice Department's handling of it. So that's what the GAO is looking at now. And so, and this has been part of the frustration,
right?
That Trump has been talking about, at least internally, as it relates to, Bondi's handling of it. Because when it comes down to it, like, what does that mean? Handling of it means just making it go away, not being an issue.
Jason, just got about 45 seconds left here. If it doesn't go away, but maybe nothing more gets released, there's always midterms, right? And I'm assuming your assumption is that if midterms change and the Democrats have more power in Congress, that we would get everything if we have to wait that long?
I don't even believe, even with the Democrats in Congress, that it would happen smoothly, if they were to get everything. So it's something that will, remain to be seen, but you can be assured that the fighting will continue.
And to be fair, not to make this political, but there are people from all sides of the political aisle that have come up in the documents that have been made public. So just to be fair on that. Jason, as always, thank you so much. Jason Leopold, he's Bloomberg News senior investigative reporter, author of the FOIA Files newsletter, and you can find that at bloomberg.com/newsletters.
It's not Friday, but we still got to talk to Jason Leopold because it's the end of our week, and he typically joins us on Fridays, the end of our week. So if everyone's like, wait a second, is it Friday? Why am I hearing Jason right now?
It
That's
feels
why.
like Friday.
Yeah, it does.
Check out his podcast Disclosure as well. Jason, thank you.
Hey, Charlie Pellet is standing by in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. A wild day for U.S. equities, and kicks off a long weekend with no trading, Charlie.
Exactly. No. Long weekend for a lot of people. Let's not forget that many people, especially those in the medical industry, people in broadcasting, firefighters, they're all working. Dow lower today. S&P, NASDAQ also higher today. Stocks did start off the session deep in the red after last night's speech that you heard here on Bloomberg Radio from the president. It did little to reassure investors that the war in the Middle East was nearing a swift resolution. Bottom line, though, we did see the S&P in a wild day advance and higher by 7 points, 65.82, where we wrap up the session, up by about 0.1%. Dow down 61, drop there of 0.1%. NASDAQ up 38, up by 0.2%. Russell 2000 index of small cap shares up by just about 0.7%. The VIX below 24 with a 10-year 4.30%, the 2-year 3.80%. All of this ahead of the jobs report. Yes, we got coverage for you tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. on Bloomberg Radio. Spot gold down 1.8%, 46.72. The big story, West Texas Intermediate 111.76, up 11.6%. Brent up by 7.6%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thank you so much for that update, Charlie. Really do appreciate it. So
I'm talking to our guest on the side.
Oh, well, okay, you can do that, but I want to introduce her first. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so we love talking small, medium,
for me to interrupt
big business here. We love talking all business. I'm going to tie it all together, Carol, okay?
All right.
Michelle Bowman, Federal Reserve Governor, said eased capital requirements could encourage U.S. banks to expand loans for small businesses. Here's what she said, quote, supporting credit for small businesses is critical to our economy. This was in prepared remarks for the Consumer Bankers Association a little earlier this week. Our regulatory framework must provide access to capital for these businesses to ensure our rules support the economy.
Makes sense to me, right? We talk about the importance of small business, entrepreneurship, the backbone of the U.S. economy.
Monica Nassif knows about access to capital for small business. She is, before she was a big business, she was a small business. She's the founder of the household cleaning products company, Mrs. Meyer's Clean Day. It sold to S.C. Johnson in 2008. She's also the author of the new book, I love this title, I Bottled My Mother, The Mrs. Meyer's Story, Grit, Grime, and Growing a Business. She joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Welcome.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
You have an amazing story, but it starts with your mom.
Starts with my mom.
You just told us is still alive. She's 90.
She's 93. She's still alive, going strong, lives in our family home. She's still bossing me around. Yeah, she's the one. She raised 9 children.
How did you bottle your mother?
Well, we bottled all of her values. Frugality. She loves her garden. She raised 9 kids in 10 years. And her parenting advice was, I'm raising adults, not children. And so she just had this Midwestern strong work ethic. So as we created this other brand to kind of knock off our first brand, Caldria, we decided, what would that represent? How could we take out Caldria? And we thought, a brand with strong Midwestern values. So I called my mom and said, hey, Mom, could we name you after a brand? And she goes, what's a brand? I said, well, just say yes, because we got to get going. We got things to do.
Tell us, though, about, like, this marketplace, though, is crowded. It becomes increasingly crowded. And you guys went a different route. And I told you before we got started, my daughter, who is now 23 years old, when we had her nursery, we started using, because your product is, right? I'm right.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You're right.
I was like doing the math if I'm wrong. But we were using your products because we wanted no chemicals in our room. And we've been using it since. So tell us about how you approach the marketplace.
I approached it really differently. Before we came on the scene, it was problem solution. Dirty window, Windex. Dishes, Dawn.
Yeah.
Kind of one-trick ponies. Great performance, great products, great brands. But I thought of the home as like personal care for the home. Like, what if you could clean everything in lavender or lemon verbena or basil, your window spray, your dish soap, your hands, laundry, everything. And customers loved it. So I just kind of turned the market differently and thought about it more as a fashion and personal care business than a cleaning business. And also thought, okay, what's great about the green brands? They're green, to your point earlier. They're safe. What is it about the big P&G brands? Performance, price, right? But I thought, what if you take both of those things and then add great packaging, a great personality, and bring it to the consumer? And she loved it. She really did.
It's been almost 20 years since you sold this company.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, as you see the company as part of SC Johnson, no longer, under your umbrella, has it changed?
I think it's changed a little bit. They've introduced a lot more fragrance.
Is that the biggest change in the last 20 years? Correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the bottles are the exact same they've been.
I think the bottles are the same. They've changed some tops and caps and some of the illustrations on the packaging, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same.
Do you think it still encompasses the values that you?
I think so. Absolutely.
Achieved with building this yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's if you build a brand right, in terms of. We were dominant in our category. No one was offering this many products for cleaning the home in a singular fragrance. That still holds true.
Yeah.
They're doing that really quite well.
Well, SC Johnson wasn't the first company that sort of came knocking. You had venture capitalists and private equity who were interested in the company. Why did you sell when you were only 53 years old?
Right.
And the brand, I think, to a lot of people was still relatively young.
Yeah, we grew so fast. We were also capital constrained, I'll be honest. And at the time, what was happening is all the organic brands were being acquired by strategic partners, by VC, by private equity. And from day one, from our first trade show at the Houseware Show in Chicago, I'll never forget, we had private equity, VC, and SC Johnson in our trade show booth.
Wow.
Because it was such a different category and a different brand. And I asked every private equity, every VC person that walked in the booth, hey, what can you do for us that we can't do for ourselves? And there weren't a lot of interesting answers. But SC Johnson said, we can scale this. And when you put your heart and soul and your mother into something, you really want somebody. I thought it had global presence. I really did. When I started.
Well, to Tim's point, though, I was going to ask you, without even thinking about like changes they've made, but like seller's remorse. And the reason I ask is I've talked to people whose names are on brands, well-known brands that you would know and have sold, and the regrets they have. And they were just at a point, too, where I think it became too big. It was all-consuming of their life, and they're just like, I kind of need to get out. But then a few years later and realizing, especially when it was their name or their mom.
Oh, I know.
Like it's not yours anymore.
No, it's bittersweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely seller's remorse involved, no question. But at the same time you think, okay, what am I personally really good at as the founder? I can build a brand, I can sell, I can hustle, but that you start to get get worn out too. I'm going to be honest,
Yeah.
It's a hard life.
Do you think you could build the brand today? It's such a different space, and I think there's so much more consumer awareness about this stuff. You were so early to it.
We were very
It feels
early.
like it's table stakes now to make sure a product that you put on your hands or you use to clean your home or you have in your home, like you were doing with your daughter more than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It seems like table stakes to make sure it doesn't have any harmful chemicals in
No,
it.
I think you're absolutely right. Could I build a brand again?
Not a brand, this one.
Oh, I don't know. Probably not.
I bet you could build a brand again, but I'm wondering about the timing of this one. Like,
No, the timing
was
was
it lightning in a bottle?
The timing was perfect.
Yeah.
It really was. We were kind of because here are the changes in the consumer's home. She started making changes to her diet, organic food. She started making changes to personal care. She started buying all these upscale culinary items, Nespresso, KitchenAid mixers. And I thought, why are cleaning products so behind?
Yeah.
We used to call them jewelry for the counter. She wants to leave that hand soap and dish soap by the sink right next to her gorgeous KitchenAid mixer. No one was thinking like that. I grew up in retail. I used to work for Target. So I kind of understood how that upscale consumer thought about her home. And I thought, gosh, she's got to keep step with what's happening in the world.
What do we need to know about your mom?
My
Who's
mom,
now how
she's
old?
93.
Yeah.
She's going strong. She just went on a safari in Africa with my brother, Tim. She walks to church every day. She believes in fresh air, frugality, faith, family. She has a great sense of humor. And she raised us to be confident individuals.
Yeah.
By kicking us out of the house early, I'm going to be honest. Go get a job. She never once asked, hey, Monica, what are your grades? It's, Monica, do you have a job?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was all about working.
Because you think about generational, and I always think about this. Grew up a mom she's born in 29.
Yeah.
She's not with us anymore. But, growing up, and I'm one of 7 kids. And even though we're all kind of close in terms of the duration of when she had kids, I mean, she was a homemaker first and eventually went back to work. But it's just interesting to even, women and their role in society and how it's changed. And I'm just curious, your mom is of that era where women were homemakers,
She was a homemaker. She was also a nurse.
Yeah.
And she went back to work as soon as she was able. And I think she just said there was too much to do with 9. I mean, she had 9 of us.
That's how it was in
10
our
years.
household.
Yeah, and I was the oldest girl.
Yeah.
So I had early responsibility.
Right.
For when she left, I had all the kids in tow,
If you were starting a company today, like we were talking about it, is there something, when you look at the marketplace, is there something that you find interesting that you think needs to be tackled?
I think the whole thing of social media and consumer products is super fascinating. And I kind of just wonder when that's
In a good way or a bad way?
Well, I don't know. I think it's going to flame out. I think, there's all these shiny objects, and I think the brands who build for the long haul, in good times and in bad, especially like, let's say, a skincare line or a body care,
right?
They're going to survive in any types of media. That's my opinion. So I think those brands that do that really well will survive.
What are the brands that you look out at today and you think they've done a really good job?
You know what? I look at a lot of the fashion brands and a lot of the personal care brands, and I always did throughout my entire career.
It hasn't changed. Since
It
you sold
hasn't
the company.
changed, and maybe because that's where I locked my eyes on women's wear daily and beauty, and that's where I spent my eyes and ears looking for trends.
Well, at the same time, retail has changed so much since
yeah.
you sold in 2008. If we think about the places where we used to go, bricks and mortar, to actually buy your product, I would imagine a lot of it is now purchased online. I know that when did you have the peppermint seasonal, or was that something that happened?
So
after
we created all the private label for
Okay.
Williams-Sonoma and Crate and Barrel and Harvey Nichols out of London, and Peppermint, Williams-Sonoma did that. And then it came to Mrs. Myers, and that consumers love that brand.
The reason I ask is because when it was released a few years ago, it was seasonal, and I was like, I actually have to stock up on this because if it's going to go away,
Yeah. So it's going to go away. That's going to go when you like
3
something.
boxes of it.
Yeah.
But I did it on Amazon, which
Yeah.
is not the typical way that I think people were buying your product in the early years. What is the right way to position to meet buyers where they are today versus when you were building this brand?
I think you have to depend on what's your target audience, first of all, and where do they go to consume media. And then you got to be there, like it or not. You got to figure out, all the intricacies of how they work. When we started, Amazon was 8 years old.
was curious about, yeah.
Oh, and when we used to call on them, we'd go into their, I'll never forget
Jeff,
this.
Is Jeff here?
No. Wait. It was all tech guys. And they go, how should we package this? And I said, what do you mean, how should we package it? Well, how many bottles in a box? And, they were tech geeks. They weren't product geeks. Now that's changed completely. So we had to educate a lot of the early online players, how a consumer product should be positioned, for shipping to a consumer.
Do you have a favorite moment in like this whole process?
There is a favorite moment.
Selling, now thinking back.
Not looking back, yeah. Well, building the brand, I love. I used to have a marketing agency, so we did that a lot for other clients. So I just love that entire process. But one of my favorite moments is, so when I started the company, I had this image in my mind's eye of what this brand should be. And I imagined an end cap in Target loaded with product. And so I always said when I got lost,
An
or I
end
felt
cap, meaning at the end of an
like
aisle?
at the end of an aisle, yep, like in a Target or a Walmart. And I had this image in my mind. And whenever I got discouraged or lost, I would reboot that image. So one day I'm in the Whole Foods store in Austin, Texas, where they're based. And we're supposed to do this big laundry promotion. And I run back to the cleaning aisle and I'm like, where's the laundry? I said to my salesperson, where's the laundry? She goes, you ran right by it.
You didn't even see it?
I didn't even see it. And there it was, this huge, I literally almost brought me to my knees. There was the image that I had in my mind's eye from day one. The reality of it.
Yeah.
That was a moment.
You have this book. It's really beautiful. It's kind of just, I like it. It looks like the product. How do you hope people approach it, use it, think about it?
You know what? I wrote this book, well, first as a love letter to my mother, but really for the wannabes, the dreamers, the schemers, the wannabe entrepreneurs, the people who call me, send me an email. How should I do this? Have you thought about this? Would you meet me for coffee? I've also done a lot of speaking to entrepreneur groups, and I answer a lot of the questions that I get asked all the time.
What's the number one question you get asked?
How do you do it? And you know what I say? Should you do it?
Yeah.
You really should look in the mirror and ask yourself, do you have what it takes to pull this off? Because this is not easy.
Well, it's interesting because we had the head of the MBA school. Who am I thinking?
Oh, the Berkeley, Dean at Berkeley yesterday.
Thank you. He's my mind. He's my brain.
Dean Chapman.
But just talked about the importance. Now, they're on the West Coast. They're in Berkeley.
Yeah.
And we found this with Stanford when we've talked to the team there, that it's entrepreneurship, that so many people are involved in it. But you think about the importance of it. It's not easy.
Right.
But you find a lot of like MBA candidates.
Oh, yeah.
Who really want to do it.
They really want to do it. I mean, I think I read a study that the word title founder has grown 69% on LinkedIn titles.
That's interesting.
So that's pretty fascinating.
Well,
right?
We start off of COVID. What's your favorite fragrance?
Basil.
Oh, it is.
That's like picking your favorite child. It's basil. I've got to admit it.
We had to go there. Thank you so much. Good luck. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Monica Nassif is the founder of Mrs. Myers, and she's the author of the new book, I Bottled My Mother, the Mrs. Myers story, grit, grime, and growing a business.
All right, stick around, everybody. Getting ready to wrap up on this Thursday and actually wrapping up for the week overall. We're going to take a look at stocks on the move when we come back to you. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody.
Carol, what happened this week?
A lot happened this week. I can't even believe it's Thursday and we're just about ready to wrap up here. As you know, a lot coming at us. We had an evening address from the president, a lot of speculation, war on, war off, ceasefire, no ceasefire. Here we are. We are well into a month. Are we on starting of our 6th week?
Of the war.
Of the
yes,
war.
As of Saturday morning.
As we head
US
in.
time.
Right, exactly. So there you go.
And the president said 2 to 3 more weeks.
Although, who did we have say that, a guest that said it could go into easily June?
Yeah.
So we shall see. But obviously the markets, we check it all. Hey, how we wrapped up on this Friday? S&P 500 just up about 7 points, pretty much well off its worst levels of the session, just off its highs. And we did see the Dow down on the day about 61 points. NASDAQ 100 a gain of 25 points, up about 0.1%. But we did see the S&P and the NASDAQ 100 down for the week overall. But the Russell, actually a slight gain.
Who said it could be going to June? Was that Robert Tipp of PGIM?
I think it might have been.
I'm trying to remember.
I was trying to remember that as
well.
well.
Too bad my mind is mush.
Yeah, well, that's because you're spending so much time trying to remember all the things I forget.
Okay. I'm Tim Stenovec. I'm Tim Stenovec along with Carol Masser, and we are joined by Bloomberg News equities reporter Avalon Purnell for a look at some stocks on the move this week.
Yes.
What do you got for us on the shortened trading week?
As you mentioned, a shortened trading week, but we can definitely start off with Nike. That's ticker NKE. Not a great week to say the least. It fell about 14% into the close, closing down at its lowest level since 2014. That's after the sportswear company forecast a revenue drop of as much as 4% for the fourth quarter. Bank of America writing in a note that they thought that there was going to be improved performance and that the results would mean a return to growth in the first quarter. Instead, management has initiated guidance for sales to remain negative. Now, we can all remember that Nike is in the early stages of a turnaround, a new CEO, and this is actually the first forecast under that new CEO, Elliott Hill, but definitely still going to be an interesting time for Nike.
It's been an interesting time for a while.
Yeah, it's actually.
That's the problem, and we had this great piece. If you missed it, check it out on the Bloomberg terminal. Lily Meyer writing this story. It's at Bloomberg.com as well. But it's about this message that Elliott Hill gave to employees this week, saying he's ready to start winning again and trying to rally the troops. It's a challenge to do that when you work at a publicly traded company. The stock has been beaten up so much, and so much compensation has to do with a stock price.
And the CFO talked about cutting costs, so that puts pressure on them while they are trying to kind of turn around. I mean, let's not be silly. It's a well-known brand, iconic brand, still sells a ton of stuff.
Can I tell you something?
But it's been stuck. What?
My 7-year-old loves Nike.
Yeah.
Just based on the stars he sees wear it when he watches sports, what the kids talk about at school.
Yeah.
He knows what Nike is.
Yeah. So I know. So that's why I'm saying, you got to believe, but we have seen great brands come under pressure. Think about Apple and the runs that it has had over its 50-year history.
Happy birthday, Apple.
Yeah,
yesterday.
see how I did that?
Yeah.
All right, where shall we go?
Yeah, let's head over to
She's
EchoStar.
Get me out of here. That's what Avalon's saying. Who are these two?
She's looking at the clock. Come on, guys.
That is ticker SATS. It closed up 15% this week. We can finally see some green. That's after several updates on Elon Musk's SpaceX's IPO plans. They filed confidentially for an IPO earlier this week and are said to be targeting a $2 trillion IPO evaluation, according to our reporting this week. That would make the company bigger than all but 5 companies in the S&P 500.
The reporting around this has been absolutely amazing. Kyle Porter, Eric Johnson, Bailey Lipschultz out with the most recent story that you just mentioned. Could target a valuation of over $2 trillion. It's the world's most valuable startup. We're also got a report this Thursday from Reuters that said SpaceX has had discussions with Saudi Arabia's public investment fund about that fund potentially taking an anchor stake of around $5 billion in the IPO.
Because they can.
They got the money.
They got the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of excitement around that one. That's a big deal. I don't even remember talking about this stock throughout the week.
Which
Do
one?
you? The next one that she's going to go to.
Hold on, I have to look at my notes.
Lumentum Holdings. That's ticker LITE. It's kind of a little known name, but it rose 26% this week, closing today at a record high. And it joins a small group of optical component makers that have become the market's latest darlings. My coworker Ryan had a great story out about it this week about how Lumentum plays a crucial role in data centers, especially as rising AI usage requires increasing amounts of bandwidth. And the stock is one of the top performers in the S&P 500 this year, already up 124%.
Wow.
Sienna Corp, at least according to our supply chain analysis on the Bloomberg, 22% of that company's revenues. Alphabet is also a big customer, about 21%. Looks like it's the second biggest customer. Apple's a customer, Amazon's a customer, Cisco's a customer. That's a pretty nice customer list.
Could have been one of your gainers today, Carol. Wasn't, though.
Thanks very much for that.
Just could have been.
You know, it's a good thing we have a long weekend here. I'm just going to say. Okay. Just kidding. Those are great names. Really, really great. Thank you so much, Avalon. Have a great weekend. That is, of course, Avalon Purnell of Bloomberg News. And check out our Stock Movers podcast. 5-minute episodes, big winners or losers in the stock market. You can find it at Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Today was a great show.
You're a little
we have a
surly,
great
aren't
team.
you, as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I think you and I both need to be like rebooted. I can't speak for you, but
I definitely need a reboot.
The Nasdaq finished the day up by 0.2%. The S&P 500 up 0.1%. The Dow down about 0.1%.
So appreciate Talia, Sebastian, Elizabeth, Justin, Derek, Sophie, Brendan. Did I leave anybody out? We need you guys to make it happen, and they made it happen in a big way. Have a safe weekend, everybody. Balance of Power starts now.
This is Balance of Power, live from Washington, D.C.
From Bloomberg's Washington, D.C. studios to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew. Tonight, Bondi out, Blanche in. Pam Bondi is out as Attorney General, ending a turbulent tenure atop the Justice Department. Deputy Todd Blanche steps in as acting AG. What this shakeup signals about a White House under pressure. Plus, the war continues. President Trump issuing fresh threats against Iran's infrastructure in an address to the nation that offered little on an exit strategy. Iran, meantime, tightening its grip on the Strait of Hormuz and raising the stakes for global energy markets. And DHS payday, President Trump says he will move to restore pay for Homeland Security workers, but sidelined by the agency's shutdown. But the broader funding fight is still unresolved, with House Republicans split over the Senate's plan. We'll discuss the latest on funding and Capitol Hill with Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois. But we begin this evening with the breaking news we've been following throughout the day here, the president's decision to oust the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. President Trump confirming the news following several high-profile stumbles on the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, the probes into president's perceived political enemies, and much more. Posting on Truth Social, quote, "We love Pam, and she will be transitioning to a much-needed and important new job in the private sector to be announced at a date in the near future. And our Deputy Attorney General and a very talented, respected legal mind, Todd Blanche, will step in to serve as acting Attorney General." For more, we turn now to Bloomberg's Courtney Subramanian, who is live on the North Lawn of the White House. Courtney, it's great to have you. Do we know why now?
Yeah, this is a story that has been percolating for months. We did know the president was frustrated with her handling of the Epstein files, as you said, and also her inability to prosecute some of these cases, these investigations into his perceived political enemies. But it all seemingly came to a head. This, of course, is the second cabinet firing the president has made in 2 months, which is extremely rare for the president in this term. This is something that we saw a lot more in his first term. But as you may recall, Susie Wiles did mention back in December in an interview with Vanity Fair that they felt Bondi had completely whiffed her handling of the Epstein investigations. And again, this has all seemingly come to a head. The president announced that Todd Blanche would step in, another former personal attorney. We are hearing that EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin is in the running to replace her, but we should expect more on where Pam Bondi ends up in the coming days.
And we don't know where she is going. Just quickly, Courtney, before we change the subject here, do we know what this private sector job is?
We do not. We do not. But I'm sure they are scrambling to find a place for her as we speak.
This won't last too long. Talk to us about fallout from the president's speech last evening. Of course, Courtney, an important and, in his case, rare address to the nation in prime time. The markets clearly didn't love what he had to say. Oil prices surging today as he brought forth a bit of color on drawing down the end of this war soon, as he said, but no plan to reopen the strait.
Yeah, I think the president really just rehashed a lot of what he had said, both in person to reporters, on social media. He reiterated the reasons why, the rationale why the U.S. military operations were underway in Iran. He said the war would end quickly and that they were close to achieving all of their objectives. But again, we didn't really get a timeline on when exactly this war is winding down. And I think that was the expectation that folks had expected the president to talk about in this speech when he was selling the American public on why this war was happening and why the U.S. is still over there, continuing military strikes on Tehran. But again, I think this is something that we continue to hear from the president, both, through his various interviews and online, and he just continued to reiterate the same things he has said all week.
Courtney, thank you so much. Bloomberg's Courtney Subramanian reporting live from the White House on Balance of Power. In one of her last public comments as Attorney General, Bondi spoke to the press following a closed-door briefing with congressional lawmakers after they subpoenaed her to testify under oath on the DOJ's Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Listen.
This has spanned 4 administrations: Bush, Obama, Trump 1, 45, where Jeffrey Epstein was prosecuted, and then Joe Biden's administration, where 0 documents were provided. We have provided 3 million documents.
Despite her being fired, some members of the House Oversight Committee tonight now are vowing to move forward with Bondi's deposition subpoena that had been scheduled for April 14th. Many, in fact, thought this is why she was fired on this day of all days. Joining us now, someone who can help shed some light on that. Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois indeed serves on the House Oversight Committee, and it's great to have you back with us, Congressman. Your ranking member, Robert Garcia, says that Bondi will not escape accountability and remains legally obligated to appear before our committee under oath. Will she?
Well, she is obligated to appear. She has a lot of explaining to do. And I think that one of those big questions that looms over this particular deposition is, where are all the documents? They need to turn over all of the documents. There are millions of pages of documents that have yet to be turned over. Even among the documents that were turned over, numerous pages are redacted. When I went to review these quote unquote redacted pages to find out what was actually being redacted, it's not even clear why so many pages are redacted. Even among the pages that are redacted, when you take the redactions off, the underlying materials are redacted. So there are numerous questions that linger over that. And why do we care about that? It's because the women who are now middle-aged women, then young girls who were victimized by this ghastly child sex trafficking ring by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and who have yet to receive a single measure of justice. And so, yes, she needs to appear, and she's going to be asked some very pointed questions about this as well as other issues.
Do you believe that your chairman, Chairman Comer, will support that? Have you heard from the Republican in charge of this committee? And I'd love to ask you what questions you might have for her, because a lot of people thought the president might have decided to replace her now before she had a chance to testify?
Well, I have not heard from Mr. Comer, the chair, as to how he's going to proceed, but I fully expect that she needs to appear. She needs to be ready to answer questions. She needs to be held accountable, and she needs to explain the answers to a number of questions. I just told you one of those questions, which is where are all the rest of the documents?
Sure.
Why are they being withheld from us? Also, what else needs to happen within the Justice Department for us to, get more answers to other questions related to this investigation and the Epstein situation, such as with regard to Ghislaine Maxwell. You said that Mr. Blanche is going to become the acting attorney general. He held this bizarre interview with her that gave her an opportunity to essentially rewrite history. She didn't show a measure of guilt or remorse. She didn't even admit to wrongdoing. And it basically gave her a platform to, essentially talk about how great Donald Trump was. And so, and it seemed to me that, basically Blanche was dangling the potential of a pardon or leniency in return for shaping her testimony. I'd like to know more about how that interview came about and what was done after that interview that would lead her to, I'm talking about Maxwell, to go into a minimum security prison in Texas. A number of other questions follow from that as well.
Well, that's fascinating. Do you think that an acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, might provide further comfort to Ghislaine Maxwell, including releasing her from that facility?
Potentially. Look, I think that Ghislaine Maxwell is definitely seeking a pardon or clemency or even more leniency. And the question is, what is she being asked to do to get that? What is she being asked to do to help Donald Trump? And I think that's at the heart of the problem with Pam Bondi being Attorney General, which is basically Trump expected her to be his attorney, essentially. Whereas the Attorney General needs to be an Attorney General for the American people and put the public interest first, not Donald Trump's interest first. And so I think Todd Blanche is going to have the same problem that Bondi did, because he's going to be expected to perform that role of being basically the president's personal attorney instead of being the people's attorney. And, we'll see how he handles that. But I'm not holding my breath.
Well, I'll tell you, we understand that she's not out of the building exactly yet. The headline reads that Pam Bondi has been fired, but when you read her post today on Twitter, she's got 30 days, I guess, to take care of the transition that the president began today. Are you concerned about that? A lot of people aren't allowed to hang around their place of business after they get fired.
I don't know what she's going to do in the remaining 30 days. Maybe she'll have an exit interview of some kind with the president. I'm not sure. But the main point is this, which is the Attorney General going to, whoever occupies that particular office, is that person going to do the people's bidding or going to primarily do Donald Trump's bidding? That is the number one question that needs to be answered. I fear that Todd Blanche is just going to continue to do whatever Donald Trump wants, not necessarily what is in the public's best interest. In fact, I believe that Pam Bondi was fired because Trump said that she did not successfully prosecute his political enemies, and she didn't handle the Epstein files situation properly, not necessarily because she didn't disclose all the information that was required of her under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, or even what the Oversight Committee demanded or should have received, but rather because maybe she disclosed too much, or she didn't handle the PR fallout from the whole Epstein controversy properly, when it's really not a PR issue. It's more of a legal issue, and it needs to be done fairly, legally and constitutionally. So that's kind of my biggest concern right now.
Congressman Christian Morthy, I need to ask you about the record-long shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security, which remains a major story here in Washington, and one that we thought had been solved again after thinking it had been solved last week. And I realize there's infighting on the Republican side of the aisle here, but the House today did not codify what the Senate did, and there are questions about whether this is going to happen now that especially the president has found money to pay DHS workers beyond the TSA. Does this shutdown go on indefinitely? If workers are getting paid, could DHS be shut down or unfunded all year?
I hope not. Well, look, ICE and CBP should not get another dime right now, but there was a deal on the table that the Senate Republican conference unanimously approved to basically pay TSA workers, Secret Service, FEMA, Coast Guard workers. And that, I believe, was the deal that Mike Johnson agreed to basically take up in the House. Now, as you can tell, he didn't take it up today in the pro forma session because obviously there are objections even within his caucus to doing that. I think it's from the hard right. But look, I think that if you try to placate the hard right, that's a losing game. Again, I go back to the issue of whose interests are we trying to put forward right now? The American people's interests or someone else? And I think right now, unfortunately, the House Republican leadership is putting its interests first instead of the American people's interests. And the people want TSA workers paid. They don't want 6-hour lines in TSA. For that matter, they don't want $6 gas either. And that's a different story. But unfortunately, they're being made to confront both at this point.
Well, Congressman, there's another vote looming here just quickly in our remaining moment. That would be reconciliation. And I know this is going to be a Republican exercise, but after the president's ballroom today got final approval from the National Capital Planning Commission, there is a thought that if Congress needs to approve this ballroom and the replacement of the East Wing, that Congress needs to sign off on it. That was the ruling that brought us here. And there are some Republicans who want to throw that into reconciliation as well. Is that the bill that will greenlight the ballroom?
Gosh darn, I hope not. I hope that Republicans will come to their senses and understand that the American people don't want a golden ballroom. They want the opposite of what's happening right now, the dysfunction and the chaos. They want, for instance, they don't want the Iran war anymore, okay? The American people don't want $6 gas. They don't want their cost of living going through the roof. And they want the Republican Party to once again focus on their interests. The American people feel neglected, I believe. They feel that it's chaotic and dysfunctional, and they want their government back. And this kind of reconciliation stuff, you ram it down the American people's throat. Well, look, it might work for a day, but it's not going to work come election time. And at the end of the day, there's going to be accountability one way or another.
I appreciate your insights today, Congressman. Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois, we thank you. It was a roller coaster ride today on Wall Street as markets reacted to the president's address to the nation last evening, which again did not offer a plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. For more, we turn to Power Moves with Bloomberg's Nora Melinda, who's live at our world headquarters in New York. Hey, Nora.
Hey, Joe. Well, we've reached the end of the first week of the second quarter, albeit a holiday-shortened week. Of course, we do know that there's a lot that's happened this week. If we take a look at what's been going on in the activity just on this Thursday, we do know that the S&P 500 did reverse some sharp declines that we saw earlier in the session. The S&P up by about 0.1% to end the day, alongside the NASDAQ with that same number. We see the Dow Jones Industrial Average slipping lower by about 0.1%. People are also keeping their eye on a jobs report that we will receive tomorrow, even given the fact that it'll be Good Friday and the stock market will be closed here on Wall Street. But if we take a look at some of the individual sector moves that we were seeing in the S&P 500, we saw real estate stocks really pushing ahead as the best performing group in that index. And then we did see consumer discretionary really taking it to the chin. This is the first week that we did see, though, in the green for all three major indices. All three indexes actually seeing their best weekly gains since November. So while there was a lot of activity and volatility throughout the week, we do still see some gains for the first time on the week since February. Taking a look now toward oil, I want to dig into some of the numbers. I'm looking at Brent crude oil up by about 7%. WTI surging double digits, up by about 11%. We know that the Wall Street really is still keeping an eye on the oil market, especially as we still continue to get a bit of mixed messaging here about what's going on regarding the conflict in the Middle East and whether or not we will see an end anytime soon here, Joe.
Nora, thank you so much. Bloomberg's Nora Melinda live in New York. Coming up, we'll turn back to the ousting of Attorney General Pam Bondi and look ahead to what this will mean for the Justice Department with new leadership. It's next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
She was essentially ineffective at doing the job, but she was ineffective at understanding the basic foundation of the job. The Attorney General, like all cabinet members, take an oath to support the Constitution. They don't take an oath to support the president. Now, they can be fired, of course, by the president, but our government officials are not supposed to be personally loyal to a president of the United States.
It's Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. That was constitutional lawyer Robert McWhirter, practicing criminal defense civil rights lawyer in Maricopa County, Arizona, speaking with us earlier today about, yes, the ousting of Attorney General Pam Bondi, a huge breaker. And joining us now with his reaction, someone who has worked with Bondi, Dave Ehrenberg, managing partner of Dave Ehrenberg Law, former state attorney in Palm Beach County, Florida. Dave, it's great to have you back with us here on Bloomberg. As I mentioned, you knew Pam Bondi. You know her personally, as you were both lawyers working for the state of Florida. Based on everything you've seen in this first year and change of the Trump administration, did she have this coming?
Joe, good to be back with you. Donald Trump expects that he could push a button and then have his enemies prosecuted, but it's not so easy. So whoever takes this job is going to meet the same fate because he has an unrealistic expectation of what an attorney general is supposed to do. He wants a Roy Cohn. Well, you can do a Roy Cohn like he was going to get with Matt Gaetz, but then Matt Gaetz couldn't get confirmed. So anyone who can get confirmed through the Senate is not going to be the type of attorney general that he's going to want.
Interesting. I know there's a lot of speculation about why now. And Dave, some have pointed to President Trump's experience yesterday at the Supreme Court. Pam Bondi went with him as he watched arguments on behalf of the administration on his birthright citizenship challenge, and it, of course, did not go well. Did that lead to him making this decision now?
I don't think so. I think actually the process in firing Kristi Noem and replacing her had more to do with it. You see, he did not want to have to fire any of his cabinet members, but then he realized how easy it was after he was able to dismiss Kristi Noem and replace her with another loyalist pretty easily. So after he broke the seal, it was game on. That was like, okay, well, then I could make moves elsewhere. So I think that had more to do with it than the Supreme Court hearing yesterday.
Interesting. What do you make of this private sector job? The president says not fired, but transitioning to the private sector, which I hope they'll all say about me someday if I get fired. I'm just wondering if this is in the legal sphere or the media or something else, Dave. What do you think?
I don't think anyone knows. I think that he offered her, according to reports, government jobs, and she must have turned them down. And so this is what is the placeholder. And if you're not going to get like the captain of the hemisphere like Chrissy Noem got, well, it's back to the private sector for you.
Well, sure. And I suspect that someone like this could do quite well in the private sector. But of course, there's a lot of baggage coming from this administration. Dave, would it be possible for her to work for a law firm again, or does she have to think more creatively?
No, there'll be law firms, lobbying firms who would definitely want to hire her. She's a big name, well-connected, and she could go on the speaker circuit, write a book. There'll be a lot of demand for her. You don't see a lot of former Trump officials starving. Even the ones who left as enemies, like Ty Cobb, is on TV all the time talking about him. So I think she'll do just fine.
He comes on this program pretty often. There are questions about whether she'll appear, I should say, for testimony on April 14th before the Oversight Committee. Dave, now that she is citizen Pam Bondi, do you think she still shows up?
That's a really good question. I was just thinking about that, Joe. I think the members of the committee were already starting to walk back their subpoena of her, and the Republicans were already starting to find ways where she wouldn't have to show up. Remember, they brought her in a surprise meeting with the committee, and the Democrats ended up walking out. So I think she probably does not testify now that she will not be Attorney General, and they'll perhaps want to see Todd Blanche, who is the acting Attorney General. And quite frankly, Joe, he's the one who should be in there because he's the one who led the Epstein matter for the White House.
Interesting. That said, with an acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, is that the best thing that could have happened to Ghislaine Maxwell?
Well, it was Todd Blanche who interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell for like 9 hours. But the decision is not going to be made to what happens to Ghislaine Maxwell by Todd Blanche. It's going to be made by the guy whose face is on the banner outside of the Department of Justice, Donald Trump.
Well, his name and face are still hanging in front of that building. I don't know if that's going to change, Dave, but will anything else, as far as this agency is run as an apparatus of the White House?
It will still be an apparatus of the White House. The decisions are largely being made out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, keep in mind, it's not the first time we've seen a close relationship between the president and the attorney general. JFK appointed his own brother to be attorney general. Barack Obama had his wingman, Eric Holder, as his attorney general. But what we haven't seen before is the close relationship policy-wise between the White House and the Department of Justice.
Dave, it's great to have you back. Dave Ehrenberg, managing partner, Dave Ehrenberg Law. He was former state's attorney in Palm Beach County, with us on Balance of Power. Coming up, President Trump in the address last evening says the war in Iran is very close to completion. We'll turn to that next on Balance of Power, only on Bloomberg. It's Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. Attorney General Pam Bondi's ousting today marks the second major departure from the Trump administration in just a matter of weeks. After a stretch of relative stability in the cabinet, the news raises the question, is a broader reset underway as political pressure builds ahead of the midterms? The debrief is where we cut through all of it with Bloomberg's Mario Parker. Mario, it's great to see you back. Big questions about timing here and what might come next. When that door starts swinging, does that mean more will follow?
Well, I just spoke with a source close to the Trump White House that said just that, Joe, just that if you were a cabinet official, if you are a cabinet official in Trump's White House right now, and you saw what just happened today with Attorney General Pam Bondi, they use more colorful terms, but I'll say they said you better brace for impact right now. No one's safe.
Fasten the chin strap. And the midterms would be the key there, right? This is a White House obsessed with trying to find some continuity in messaging right now with another war that's underway and sucking a lot of the oxygen out of the room when it comes to midterm messaging.
Yeah, you mentioned the key word there, Joe, which is just a war. This person that I spoke to, for example, I spoke to a couple of people actually. The latest person just kind of mentioned just everything being downstream from the war. Earlier spoke to some other Republican strategists that were commenting on the president's speech last night as well. Everything that's happening politically out of the White House right now is through this lens of a war, right? The $4 gasoline prices, fears about a recession if this thing prolongs longer than the president is anticipating, just the high cost of living that voters are experiencing as well. Now, with the Pam Bondi situation in general, it's no secret that the president was displeased with her performance. Yeah. If the breaking point for President Trump was Joe Biden's Afghanistan moment, the breaking point for this president when a lot of the tide turned was just the dam that broke with the Epstein files, where you saw Republican fighting back a little bit more.
Why now, though? They went to the Supreme Court together yesterday. Some thought maybe that left a bad taste in the president's mouth. The fact that he would do this reportedly in the Oval Office before he got to the podium last evening. Some folks were surprised she was still here. So why now?
Well, part of it is that the president broke the seal, essentially, with the Kristi Noem firing, removal, if you will, just a couple of weeks ago. The president had tried to, and the administration had tried to not repeat some of the headlines that it got in his first term, right, where it was just this revolving door. And once the president figured out saw how seamless it could be when he had displeasure with someone who was bringing him negative headlines, in this instance, Kristi Noem, in the latter instance now, Pam Bondi, he just more forcefully moved forward with some of those things, right? Again, I mentioned the Epstein files, just the tweet that the Truth Social post, Pam, a few months ago as well. And then just within the West Wing, there had been, from my understanding, just not a whole lot of allies, but quite a few people that had her in the crosshairs.
So we turn to Todd Blanche, now acting. He was deputy, now acting attorney general. And I want to bring you back to CPAC last week, Mario, for some comments that he made about election interference potentially in the midterms and the administration's approach. Listen.
Election integrity should be the most nonpartisan issue we have. Like, why is there objection to sending ICE officers to polling places? Illegals can't vote. It doesn't make any sense. Why is there...
Well, they can vote. They just shouldn't vote, right?
That's amen. That's right.
Okay, Mario Parker, should we expect ICE agents at polling places in the midterms?
Well, there are some laws that technically prevent that from happening, but you did see at CPAC this conservative far-right jamboree, some of this groundswell around that. You had Mark Wayne Mullen in recent weeks speaking about it. You had Steve Bannon speaking about it. You got Todd Blanche speaking about it as well. Yes. One would expect the Democrats are bracing for this, at least according to my sources on that side of the aisle as well. One would expect some type of lawsuits, preemptive as well. But again, federal laws typically prevent this, but we are in a new environment here, John.
All right, Mario, thank you. Mario Parker, that's the debrief. We do this every week here on Balance of Power, and we turn back to the other big story that has been roiling global markets, the continued war with Iran. President Trump seeking to calm some nerves in that primetime address to the nation last evening. Didn't go quite that far in the markets, but tried to make the case for why the conflict was necessary and providing his timeline for the war. Some of the key moments from that address. Watch and listen.
We are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. When this conflict is over, the strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally. They're going to want to be able to sell oil because that's all they have to try and rebuild. If during this period of time no deal is made, we have our eyes on key targets. If there is no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We are in this military operation so powerful, so brilliant against one of the most powerful countries for 32 days. And the country has been eviscerated and essentially is really no longer a threat. They were the bully of the Middle East, but they're the bully no longer.
You saw it and heard it live on Bloomberg, and joining us now with reaction to the address last evening is Emily Harding, Vice President of the Defense and Security Department at CSIS. She is also the former director for Iran on the National Security Council. Emily, it's great to have you back with us. Thank you so much for your time. We have so many questions about this, beginning with the idea of the Strait of Hormuz reopening naturally. I'm not sure what the president had in mind with that vision. But that's not what the markets were looking for. How do you see that happening?
It's hard to describe it as naturally, given this is a man-made crisis. I mean, you could have a situation where Iran decides they're going to reopen the strait, that they're no longer going to harass ships as they move through the strait. But that really is a decision that the Iranian regime has to make. Even if the U.S. decides they're going to step back from the fighting, call a halt, call a ceasefire, Iran gets a vote. And what we're seeing right now is that global shipping companies, they aren't excited to start moving back through those waters until they have some kind of guarantee, until their insurance providers are happy about it, until their corporations are happy about it.
Well, of course, it would take, I'm assuming, some military effort to reopen it. And we're trying to do that now. We have a whole new number of A-10 Warthogs that are apparently strafing the coastline around the strait, along with Apache helicopters. Is there anything else we can do to soften up that area to make it possible to put ships through?
So there's never going to be a way to guarantee that you've gotten every single piece of Iranian equipment that could possibly threaten a ship. With the ubiquity of drone warfare now, with some of Iran's other autonomous capabilities, I mean, that there's an entire possibility that you could continue to harass that shipping. So one option is to have escorts. You could have U.S. warships trying to work with shipping through that very tiny waterway that's difficult to do. It's high threat, but it's possible. We've done it before.
You know, there was an interesting summit, if I can use that word today, of, frankly, U.S. allies. This was put together by the United Kingdom in an effort to address this without the United States. Would it be possible for a coalition of the willing that did not include America to reopen the strait?
Possible, absolutely possible.
They have the military might to do it?
They could if they bind together.
Yeah.
The UK Navy is not what it used to be. I mean, once upon a time, it ruled the seas. Now it's much smaller, but working in a coalition with some other countries, you could do it. I suspect that those European powers would also be looking to have some kind of negotiation with Iran where they could perhaps get some guarantees that shipping could move through the strait unmolested.
A couple of other lines from last evening. Back to the Stone Ages. Also renewing the threat to go after civilian infrastructure. We're going to finish the job, he said, finish it very fast. We're getting very close. And threatened again to demolish the energy infrastructure, the power plants, the power grid in Iran. When he talks about back to the Stone Ages in the next 2 to 3 weeks, is that what he means?
That's probably what he means. I don't want to read too much into what he says. But this idea of bombing the energy infrastructure of the country, there's two different pieces there. One is the oil infrastructure for energy. And he said he doesn't want to do that because he wants to provide Iran the future capability to recover and make money again. Yes. That kind of infrastructure takes years to rebuild. There's also the threat against electricity, so the idea of bombing power stations and things like that. I mean, that could probably be a violation of the Geneva Convention, and certainly is an indiscriminate attack on a population as opposed to a military objective. So that doesn't really fit with the way that the U.S. fights wars. That's not within our moral structure.
Interesting that this continues to come up even after he said help was on its way to the protesters before the strikes began. The missing uranium remains a question. The president brushed up against this last evening, and there's a conversation about mowing the grass, as they call it, at the Pentagon. We're not going to go in and take it. We're just going to stare at it from outer space, and when people get close to it, we'll send some missiles or some bombers over there and shoo them away. Is that a realistic strategy? And in fact, is it a safer mission than sending hundreds or thousands of troops in to get it?
100% it's a safer mission. It's probably the least bad option, actually. Okay. If you look at the two options that we have, you could create an operation to go in, to land special forces, to try to hold the territory, probably hold it for weeks while you move in heavy equipment, dig out from underneath mountains, and then secure that material as you pull it out. And that's assuming you were correct that it was actually where you thought it was. On the other hand, persistent surveillance from space, from overhead architecture, you can keep a pretty good eye on what's going on at those facilities. And even just the deterrent factor of saying to the Iranians, if you go in there and try to get it, we're watching.
Do you think we know where it is?
I suspect we know where it is.
Interesting. So he says 2 to 3 weeks. Once again, the timeline that's continued to be reiterated. All the Marines and soldiers, I believe, en route will be there by then, and a third aircraft carrier strike group will be pretty close, if not already there. Will he use them?
It's the million-dollar question, maybe the billion-dollar question right now. I mean, a ground incursion, any kind of amphibious assault on anything, is really very difficult, both technically, operationally, and then once you take that territory, you actually have to hold it. And all of those troops would very much be in harm's way. I mean, it's possible he's using this as a negotiation strategy to really up the pressure on Iran, get them to come to the table. But as we saw in Venezuela, if the person he's attempting to negotiate with isn't willing to come to the table, he is willing to act.
It's great to have you back. Appreciate your insights. The night after the speech, Emily Harding, Vice President of the Defense and Security Department at CSIS. We thank you so much. Coming up, NASA astronauts blasted off on a 10-day journey that will slingshot them around the moon, and they're en route now. We'll bring you a report from the Kennedy Space Center next on Balance of Power, only on Bloomberg TV and radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. Thanks for joining us. Artemis 2 is on its way to the moon after a NASA rocket carrying 4 astronauts blasted off right around this time yesterday on a 10-day mission that will slingshot them around the moon and carry them farther into space than anyone has gone before. Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow filed this report from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
The Artemis 2 mission and crew are quickly approaching a critical moment where mission control need to decide whether or not they are a go for the burn, the crucial burn that will propel the Orion spacecraft towards the moon. That's known as a translunar injection. The main engine or the main rocket aboard Orion performs that. Right now, the crew is at a safe orbit, going around the Earth, doing checks on systems from communication, propulsion. They've done some manual control of the Orion capsule. But if they do that translunar injection over 4 days, that's 250,000 miles or so to the far or dark side of the moon, where for a period of time they'll actually lose contact with mission control because the moon is in the way. But that was planned. They'll also look at what's on the surface of the far side of the moon: water, oxygen, other types of resources like minerals, using a range of sensors. Then, all being well, there is a free return trajectory. In other words, relying on the moon's gravitational field and the gravitational pull of the Earth, they slingshot around the moon in a figure 8 and return to Earth, with the plan being that in about 10 days' time, they will splash down off the west coast of the United States, outside of San Diego in the Pacific Ocean. So that key moment's coming up. The plan is for the mission directors to make a call somewhere between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern time, and the translunar injection burn to happen just after 8 p.m. Eastern time. T plus 1 day in about 1 hour and 37 minutes. This is historic. NASA would then be propelling astronauts towards the moon for the first time in more than 50 years in what is now a race against China for American dominance in space and to establish a presence on the moon as early as 2028 for an astronaut landing. That's what we're talking about, and the significance of the broader Artemis program. This is Ed Ludlow for Bloomberg News at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
All right, Ed, thank you so much. Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow with great coverage, and you can catch Ed alongside Caroline Hyde every weekday morning, Bloomberg Tech, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on Bloomberg TV. Back in Washington, it remains a big day for the administration as Attorney General Pam Bondi becomes the second cabinet official in a month to be shown the door. Joining us now, our political panel for their take. Arshi Siddiqui is back, Democratic strategist and founder, CEO, Bellwether Government Affairs, alongside Republican strategist Maura Gillespie, founder and principal of Blue Stack Strategies. Arshi, what do you make of this moment? There are Democrats celebrating here, but also some who think that Todd Blanche could actually be less of an improvement than some were hoping for, and might, in fact, be the very leader of the agency that Donald Trump needs to follow through on some of his retributions. How are you interpreting all this?
Well, certainly it was a shot in the arm, I would say, most in terms of morale for Democrats, I think, across the country. I've gotten a lot of random texts where people need some sort of morale boost. But at the same time, I think it was long overdue from a Democratic perspective. But at the end of the day, there's such a juxtaposition between the firings on Trump 1 versus Trump 2.0, where you saw on Trump 1.0, it was more of a clash between principles, whether it was Bolton, whether it was Tillerson, Jeff Sessions as AG, in terms of basically sparring and disagreeing and pushing back with the president. This time around, whether you like Noem or Bondi, they were very strong advocates for the president's position. And if you look at even the Epstein files, at the beginning, Bondi was acting based on campaign statements that Trump said, and when he started pivoting, she was just a little bit behind the curve. So she was very vociferous. So I think whoever replaces her, at the end of the day, they're going to be carrying the president's water.
Well, it was awfully memorable when Pam Bondi testified before the Judiciary Committee last year and spent some time, pretty incredible the way this all worked, spent some time castigating the lawmakers who were there to interview her, and in many cases pointing to completely irrelevant subject matter while they were talking about the inner workings of the Department of Justice. Here's a reminder.
The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. What does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
That was in February, just to correct myself. Maura, some folks thought that in fact damaged Pam Bondi. But if you read the president's post today on Truth Social, Pam Bondi is a great American patriot and a loyal friend who faithfully served as my attorney general over the past year. He goes on to say, "We love Pam." It's not usually what you hear when you get fired, is it?
I can say I've not been fired, so that's actually, I can't say that I know that feeling, but
Of course you have.
Thankfully. But I would say that Donald Trump probably watched that and thought she did a great job, a great performance.
Yeah.
And then only after the fact, when many people made fun of it and pointed out how ridiculous she behaved, then he realized, oh, okay, so it didn't go so well. So I don't think that he necessarily wanted to fire Pam Bondi. I think that post on True Social tells you that he struggled with it, but knew he had to because, there are a lot of problems there. We don't have time to go into all the problems that Pam Bondi caused, but I think some of the major ones for the president and his base largely do surround with the Epstein files. And so, I think that there is concern with his decision, albeit it's still, to be seen, but putting Todd Blanche in that position when he's also very much tied to the frustrations that many Americans and many in the MAGA base have about the handling of the Epstein files.
What does this mean for the Epstein files story from here, especially as it pertains to the midterms? Will this re-up the demand for these files to be released? The DOJ is still technically in violation of the law.
Absolutely. And Bondi's not off the hook yet, right? Like the oversight, I think the committee is going to be very adamant that she does. So that this story is not over, and I think it will continue. I just think as we get closer to the midterms, also it will be an issue of affordability and then economic agenda. Because I think the biggest challenge for the administration right now is their economic policies are, there's a strong case to be made that they're making things worse for American families, not better.
Well, a big part of the affordability story is happening at the gas station, Maura, and I'm sure you don't need me to tell you. $4.08, our national average today. And of course, this has everything to do with the war with Iran. The president spoke to the nation last evening in prime time. It didn't seem to move the needle on the way people feel about this. If you were already in favor of this action, you probably feel the same way. And if you were not, there was no new evidence to change your mind, nor was there a plan to reopen the strait. How will we look back on that speech last night?
I think the question is why? What was the point? And was it really worth taking 20 minutes away from, the Masked Singer finale and whatever Chicago show was on last night at that time? I just think that was, I think I saw it as a nothing burger, is what people would call it. There was no new information, but it also didn't give anyone who needed information or wanted to feel as though they had a better handle on what we were doing and why. That didn't provide that. And he also didn't seem very enthusiastic about it, to be quite honest. He seemed pretty, the lighting was very odd to me. It was very dark. He seemed to be struggling to read his teleprompter. And I just don't think that it was the best idea. I'm sure he got told it was a great job when he got back, from the podium. But I don't see it as being helpful. And for Republicans who were cheerleading him on, that's forced. It feels very forced and disingenuous. So I don't know that we're going to look back too fondly on that speech. And maybe in the future, we'll be looking at that as one of those moments where the president's age is showing. He really was struggling to get through that 20-minute speech.
Well, it was about 20 minutes, and it was interesting to see a wide shot of that room that came from the pool, Archie. It showed an audience. If you were watching this on TV, like anyone who was interrupted during Survivor or whatever you had on, you saw the president speaking at a podium in a fairly close shot. Pull back and you see rows. If you're with us on Bloomberg TV or on YouTube, we're showing you that now, almost like a mini State of the Union. The cabinet seated in the front rows, then the top brass. Look how many people were there to support the president. It reminds us that he does not like to use the Oval Office, sitting alone behind that desk, that he needs to project to people. You're a professional communicator. You train people for this kind of stuff. What do you make of that?
I think it's very clear that he performs well and feeds off other people's energies. And you see that with a lot of politicians, right? Good politicians, that they need that affirmation, that feedback loop. And Donald Trump is a pro at that, I think. I actually thought the address was interesting in the fact that it gave us a window into his thinking. And he didn't mention, certainly he didn't mention the Iranian people. The timeline shifted. As you recall, originally he said 4 to 5 weeks. Now we're looking at another 4 to 5 weeks. And then the third piece that I thought was also interesting is suddenly the Strait of Hormuz is not as important as it used to be.
Said it would open naturally.
Yes.
And also threatened to take the people's power and water away, Maura, in our remaining 30 seconds. Is that the right message from the administration right now?
No. Again, to your point, he's changed his reasonings for being there. And the very start of this was supposed to be about giving the Iranian people the chance at freedom. And that was completely, devoid of his messaging as of late. We really haven't heard very much at all about it, especially since gas went up. And so I don't think that making threats that he truly may not be able to follow through on does anything but embarrass us further on the world stage, which is not helpful to us or to our country.
Well, with crude oil at $112 almost a barrel today in New York and gas at $4.08, this is an important story that we'll keep following with the help of our panel, Archie Siddiqui and Maura Gillespie. Thank you for a great conversation, as always. Check out the Washington Edition newsletter if you want to catch up on all of these stories from Iran to Bondi. Find it on the terminal or online. And thanks for joining us on Balance of Power. We'll meet you over the weekend. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. This is Bloomberg.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Y-Refi. Did you know that as an accredited investor, when you invest in Y-Refi, your interest rate is fixed? And did you know that you can invest from 1 to 5 years, and you can spread your investment over those terms to best suit your needs? And you have the freedom to take your monthly interest as income or reinvest it, whatever you choose. When you invest in Y-Refi, your interest is calculated daily and you're paid monthly. Would you like some more information? Just call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST. Or log on to investyrefi.com. That's investyrefi.com. For complete details, make sure to review the private placement memorandum and scan this QR code to view the disclosures at your leisure. Y-Refi, investing in America's future.
Hey, small business owners, when you get a letter from the IRS, does it freak you out? When you call your CPA, do they ghost you? At Zendu, you get real live accountants that care. So go to Zendu.com, start saving money on your taxes and therapy. Zendu.com.
Get your fixed income fix. Watch Bloomberg Real Yield around the world right here on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
We planned well for retirement, but I wish we had more cash.
You think those two have any idea?
That they can sell their life insurance policy for cash, so they're basically sitting on a gold mine? I don't think they have a clue.
That's crazy.
Well, not everyone knows Coventry has helped thousands of people sell their policies for cash, even term policies.
I can't believe they're just sitting up there.
Sitting on all this cash.
If you own a life insurance policy of $100,000 or more, you can sell all or part of it to Coventry, even a term policy, for cash or a combination of cash and coverage with no future premiums.
Someone needs to tell them that they're sitting on a gold mine and you have no idea. Hey guys, you're sitting on a gold mine. Come on,
do you hear that?
I don't hear anything anymore.
Find out if you're sitting on a gold mine. Call Coventry Direct today at 800-458-2100 or visit coventrydirect.com.
All right, locked in for this meeting. Total focus. Double booked? All good. Otter AI gives meeting notes and insights, even on meetings I can't attend. Dang it, I picked the boring one.
Otter, the AI meeting agent.
Great work starts with a great workspace. That was the idea behind the original Veridesk, and it's the inspiration behind everything we do. From our latest standing desks and ergonomic seating to free shipping and fast assembly. We create a workspace that works for you, so you can feel your best and do your best. Start your office upgrade today.
Anti-Corruption Commission has seized around 5 million ringgit from a safe house linked to a prominent politician.
The Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission has arrested former Army Chief General.
MACC began probe last year against former Prime Minister Ismail
The Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission is a very powerful law enforcement agency. It can arrest people, it can freeze their bank accounts, it doesn't need to use the police to do any of these things.
There were all these high-profile raids going on. There were all these allegations that there was a group of businessmen who were working with MACC to take down their rivals and take over companies.
Ya, seperti yang dilaporkan dalam artikel Rahsia Mafia Korporat Malaysia.
Rahsia Mafia Korporat Malaysia. Sejak beberapa hari lalu, sebuah portal menerbitkan artikel berhubung sekumpulan individu melakukan cubaan merampas syarikat sedarai awam dan sebuah syarikat lain.
We wanted to find out if there was any truth to these allegations.
I was brought into MACC and was questioned. Some of the officers were intimidating me, banging the table, screaming at me.
It's like you're cut off from the whole world. It was a lot of hurt. Then there was a lot of stress, anger.
People were just very scared to talk to us. There's an immense fear that the MACC can just one day turn up at your doorstep and just make your life a living hell.
What's being alleged is that the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission is actually corrupt. This is the agency that's supposed to police all the other agencies for corruption in Malaysia. One of the most explosive things is that in some cases, questions about suspicious conduct may lead all the way to the very top of the organization.
Rasuah ibarat penyakit kronik, seumpama kanser yang tidak dirawat akan menghancurkan negara kita.
I have been covering Malaysia for over 20 years. Malaysia is a vibrant country. It's got great food, great mix of cultures. And then, unfortunately, Malaysia is also known for corruption scandals.
That's it over there, right?
Yep, that is the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission headquarters in Putrajaya, and this is the administrative capital of Malaysia.
We're literally right in the center of Putrajaya here. You've got the Prime Minister's office there. You've got the mosque in the center of Putrajaya there. And the next kind of really important, like distinctive building on the skyline is the MACC headquarters.
And this was supposedly a symbol of the government's commitment to fighting corruption.
The Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission investigates corruption. It essentially reports to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, in effect, picks its chief commissioner. But in 2015,
people who have, in fact, made a lot of money. George Soros bet against the British pound and made a lot of money. There were people who sold short in 2000 and made a lot of money. But I am not willing to say that they were geniuses. I want to say that they were lucky, because for every one of them, there was a hedge fund that in fact lost money. No, I don't think there are geniuses. I think there are a lot of very smart people in Wall Street, but it is not possible to predict the future. And, you know, it's kind of very interesting how you talk about AI. I recently had to give a presentation on the economic outlook. And I thought, you know, just for kicks, I will go to ChatGPT and I will ask, can you give me an outline of what I should say? And actually, ChatGPT gave me a wonderful answer. It was a one-sentence answer. I cannot predict the future.
It might not necessarily qualify as genius, but you're able to write about Wall Street with clarity, which is really unusual because Wall Street, and I suffer from this myself, you speak to Wall Street executives and they absolutely fetishize complexity. Why does Wall Street like to make things sound so complicated? Is there something sinister or something that has to do with the ego?
I don't know whether it's sinister, but this is a very highly paid profession. And someone like me who says, listen, don't listen to anybody. Just buy a simple index fund and keep on investing period after period. If I'm charging you 2% a year to manage your money, I want you to think you can't do it yourself. So sure, you've got a vested interest. This is a very highly paid profession. These guys do very, very well. Is that sinister? I don't know. You call it sinister, anything you want, but is there an incentive to make it seem like it's very complicated, that ordinary people can't do it themselves? I think that's absolutely right.
The honest truth is, it's not necessarily that I think that the aura of complexity on Wall Street is coming from a sinister place. More like it makes me feel bad or makes me feel dumb, and that I appreciate that your book is sort of written so that I can understand it. But it does make me think about exclusion in a small way, because so many stocks are owned by so few people in this country, because the very wealthiest people in America have such giant portfolios, that when the stock market goes up, inequality goes up too. Is there anything that can be done to change that in the future?
One of the things that's impressed me throughout my life is really how capable so many people are. And I think to the extent that we can eliminate discrimination, I mean, for example, opening up our jobs, our economic opportunities to women has been a very good thing, and I think has been generally helpful for women. I think it's the same sort of thing in terms of racial discrimination. I am absolutely convinced that rather than there being just a small coterie of geniuses, that intelligence is very widely distributed in our population. And so my own sense would be the more we can do with education, the better.
Why is it that we need geniuses, or really just the concept of genius? Is it like the way we need heroes and heroism, to help just explain the world and justify?
I think we need innovators, and I'm not saying that innovation isn't good. We absolutely do, but I'm not going to call them geniuses. And Jack Bogle would certainly never have called himself a genius. But I think we do need innovators. There will undoubtedly be financial products that are actually good for one. I'm not a fan of Bitcoin. I don't think, I don't recommend that any investor buy it. But will there be improvements in the payment system in the future? And will there be digital currencies in the future that are stable and that are useful, as opposed to something that goes up $1,000 or down $1,000 in a day? Absolutely. And there's room for much more innovation in finance. So I think there will be innovation. There should be innovation. I just wouldn't call it genius.
That was great. Burt Malkiel, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Stay tuned, because next we have a very far-out genius. There is no one way to be a genius. You could be dreamy and far out. You could be scrupulous and scientific. You could work within the institutional establishment, or you could honor indigenous wisdom. All of those descriptions apply to this guest. Moraba Jah is a space environmentalist, an astrodynamicist, a spacecraft navigator, and the first African-American professor of aerospace engineering at the University of Texas. Last year, the MacArthur Foundation gave him a fellowship that is informally known as a Genius Grant. So, if you want, you could call him a genius, you could call him Professor Jah, but you'd rather you call him Moraba. So, Moraba, welcome.
Great to be here, my brother. Thank you so much.
Really glad to have you. I really love the phrase, a stroke of genius. You were in Alaska with your family in a hotel one morning. I think you were taking a shower.
Yeah.
And you had this feeling and this vision that kind of struck you. And you know, whether or not it has anything at all to do with genius, tell us about that moment.
You know, I'm in the shower, and I felt a presence. And in my mind's eye, I saw flashes of scenes from like history and how in the beginning, whatever that means, it seems like there was this intergenerational contract of stewardship with the planet, but that humanity over time has mostly abandoned that intergenerational contract of stewardship and has forgotten about how interconnected things are.
Did that moment change the life you led and the work that you do?
Absolutely. So one of the people that I really look up to is Jane Goodall. I watched something about Jane where she said that she went to a meeting as a scientist and she left that meeting an activist. In very similar ways, I went to Anchorage, kind of just this scientist, and I came back both a scientist and now this space environmentalist activist to really try to, I guess, really showcase how we need to protect orbital space.
If there's a kind of genius that means something to you, something that you would want to live up to, or something you'd want to recognize in yourself, what would that kind of genius like actually look like?
To me, the best kind of genius is simply allowing myself to let the universe go through me and, I guess, use me as some sort of vehicle for the work that I'm trying to do. And if I can keep myself kind of in the moment and in a place of compassion and empathy, then I think genius is just what comes through when you allow that to happen.
There's more garbage orbiting the Earth than there are working satellites. You now work not just to make sure that all that stuff is properly tracked, but to be an evangelist for expanding the way we think about environmental protection so that it includes all that stuff. What can those of us who are not scientists, what can we do to help you?
Every day, the technologies that we have are more and more reliant on these robots in the space that we call satellites. And we're tracking about 50,000 things ranging in size from a cell phone to the space station. 5,000 are working and everything else is garbage.
Mind behind efforts to remove them from their company.
So Victor Chin has been investigated by several.
And capabilities, position, navigation, timing, communications, internet with the Starlink satellites, right? Any of these things can get schwacked, that's the technical term, get schwacked by a piece of junk, and that's game over, and then you lose that capability. So I think more and more people just need to be aware that, oh, well, that space, that's somebody else's problem. No, it's our problem because our way of life, our technology is now going through this infrastructure.
There's a real stereotypical idea of genius that I'm thinking of a kind of solitary genius working by herself or himself off in a fun cabin, you know? What does it mean, what would it mean to be a genius collaborator?
Back in the times of like the Renaissance, people looked at folks like, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and they said, okay, these are geniuses in their own right? And people say, well, how can anybody be like another one of those? Science has developed so much beyond those days that there's no way for somebody to be able to be, quote unquote, this Renaissance person that knows very deeply things in all these different fields. Like, those days are gone, okay? But to me, the real genius is recognizing where you bring in smart people from other fields that complement and augment your own to solve wicked problems.
Yeah, connectedness, connections with one another. But my understanding, though, from reading a little bit of your writing, is that you were, I think in your childhood, you felt really isolated.
I did, yeah. My mom was born in Haiti, and she was naturalized citizen. My father, Sierra Leone, naturalized citizen. They got divorced when I was very young, and yeah, my father was just very abusive. So at the age of 7, he kidnapped me, and 9 days later, they found me in some apartment in the Bay Area, put me back on a plane to my mom. And my mom had, we had a cousin that lived in Caracas, and so we fled the country because my mom's like, I don't want your father to ever find you again. He never did physically again. But growing up in Venezuela, I felt very isolated. I felt very alone. I came into contact in this void with what seemed to feel like an ocean of infinite love and compassion. And then I realized, I have a choice here. I can choose to meet my experiences with equal anger, or I can choose to act from a place of love and compassion and heal from my pain and make my healing be of service to others. And that's what I've chosen to do.
When the MacArthur Foundation, when they named you a fellow, they said it was because, they used a beautiful phrase, it's because you envision transparent and collaborative solutions for the Earth's orbital spheres. What are those solutions? And maybe when are they coming?
My inspiration for this comes from indigenous people, from traditional ecological knowledge, TEK, I call it ancient tech. And so for me, the vision of my future is seeing Western science and traditional ecological knowledge come together, not annihilate each other, but actually harmonize with each other, so that then that could be the way of the future, so that humanity does recognize interconnectedness, empathy, and stewardship.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story, sharing yourself.
Thank you, brother.
Truly enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Coming up next, a genius I would like to be when I grow up. Getting older is not easy, but the good news is time brings opportunities to become a more practiced, a more seasoned, a more you version of you. The guest who's sitting with me at this table is one of the most accomplished people I've ever met, and she is 17 years old. In 2021, Zaila Avantgarde won the Scripps National Spelling Bee. But She considers herself not so much a speller as a basketball player, and she has multiple Guinness World Records in juggling. A few weeks ago, this young genius started the 11th grade. Zaila, so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Truth is, we're all super different. We all have our own gifts. We all have our own limitations. When and how did you come to realize how special you are?
So that's a complicated question, I would say, because I didn't so much realize, I realized I was special, but I became special through a process of like training and stuff. If you look back on it, like I wouldn't say I popped out the womb like a genius or something like that. It's like when people would start to stop and look at me while I was dribbling or practicing at a court, people like stop and look because, hey, look at this cute little girl. I was very small when I was that age. So this cute little girl dribbling 2 balls and doing all this between the legs, step backs into shots and stuff. So pretty early on, I realized that, yeah, I might be a little bit different than the average kid.
You won this like completely beloved national competition, but it's something that I think you no longer consider your main passion, or maybe you didn't even consider it your main passion then. What does basketball make you feel that spelling doesn't?
I would say basketball gives me even more of like the competitive rush. Like I just really love to compete and stuff. So like, and like spelling is more like, yes, it's not really like person-to-person competition. It's more like person versus dictionary, which is something you hear a lot from spelling bee people. It's like it's me versus the dictionary, because that's where the words are coming from. Whereas with basketball, it's more like physical competition. Like, oh, I made it between the legs, and there's this girl on me, and I have to shield her off. And it's like more tangible competition, as opposed to the more philosophical competition of spelling.
I want to ask you about a very different kind of genius. There's this billionaire named Sam Bankman-Fried. Think you've heard of him?
Of course.
Widely considered to be the world's, great crypto genius before he was then charged with fraud, which he has denied. How should the rest of us look at people who get called geniuses, but maybe they still have shortcomings, just like everybody else?
Sometimes I feel like the term genius is like nowadays it's so loaded. Like it's not, maybe it's like, oh, it doesn't just mean, oh, look at her, she's a genius, like she's so smart or whatever. But like then like if you're labeled with that like your whole life, that kind of like puts a pressure on you. Like maybe once upon a time, like I listened to a podcast about Sam Bankman-Fried, but I don't know him personally, so I can't speak for him. But hypothetically, like he's like his parents are like, oh my God, you're so smart. He goes to accelerated programs in school, and that's just putting pressure from a very early age. Like, I'm a genius, I have to be a genius, I have to always be a genius. So I always feel like people, like some of the scammers and stuff, should get maybe just a little bit of sympathy, just a little bit, because they are like causing all sorts of trouble, because like they've been considered geniuses their whole life, and they had a nice business plan or something, but then it didn't work out. And so what are they supposed to do? Go to all these people who say, oh, you're a genius? That just puts a little pressure on you to like give you that extra push you needed to try to maybe go into the murky waters of life.
The murky waters of life. I want to ask you one final question about pressure. I think that there is sometimes pressure in the United States, maybe everywhere, pressure on really smart people, genius or otherwise, to use their intelligence to like make a lot of money, to be successful. And like, I guess I'm thinking specifically about the finance industry and mathematicians, but it's true of the business world. You're smart, you go make money in business. Do you have a favorite company or an industry or like a job that appeals to you?
I mean, I'm not like super like make millions of dollars. I mean, if anybody who's watching or listening wants to give me millions of dollars, please hit me up. However, like I'm interested in going to neuroscience, or maybe working for NASA, or maybe being an NBA head coach. But I just realized I've never thought, how much money would I get for this? Because that's not really something like I think of, because you can make a lot of money, not to sound trite, but you can also be really miserable making a lot of money. So that's not even something I actually consider, like how much money will I make? I'll cross that bridge when it comes.
Zaila, you're gonna cross the bridge, you're gonna have a great time. I have had a great time talking to you. I'm thrilled you're here.
Thanks for having me.
When you ask geniuses, as I just did, what a genius is, or if we need geniuses, or if they're a genius, the answer you'll get will be genius. It turns out that there is not one way to be a genius of finance or of art or of language, just as there is not one way to think about genius itself. What matters is not what you call unusually high levels of intelligence or talent. What matters is what you do with it. Thank you so much for watching the first episode of the Business Week Show. We'll see you again for another one soon.
I am a completely virtuous person. I have no missing virtues. But I do wish I could sing.
People clearly tend to be impatient where they should be patient.
I waste the most money on champagne. I love champagne every day. Every day I have 2 glasses of champagne. That's my thing. 2 glasses of champagne every day.
Risk is everywhere. It is a risk to get out of bed, take a sip of coffee, step into the street, shake someone's hand, eat a tuna melt. Trust risk betrayal, authenticity risk rejection, and if you want to play it safe, doing nothing risks missing out on everything. We associate risk with what you might lose, but there is no winning in the marketplace without it. If anyone ever comes up to you and offers you something that is completely risk-free, buyer beware. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I read this thing in Bloomberg Business Week about Silicon Valley Bank, which bought billions of dollars of bonds, a risk, then the value of those bonds fell, depositors went running out the door, and the impact of that risk was one of the biggest bank failures in the history of this country. What does it feel like to take risk in business and in life? We're gonna try to find out from actual risk takers. It's a risk, we're gonna take it together, and we're gonna take it tonight.
It's the Business Week Show.
Welcome to the Business Week Show. Tonight, risk. The very idea of who gets to take financial risk in global markets and how they go about taking that risk, and then how they talk about that risk, changed thanks to tonight's first guest. In 2012, Jamie Rogozinski logged onto Reddit, he started a new page, and he called it Wall Street Bets. In the years that followed, it got millions of users. It sparked real frenzies in stocks like GameStop and AMC, and at one point, it got its own Super Bowl ad. But as you may imagine, things did not work out all that well for everyone. And Jamie is here tonight to tell us all about it. Jamie, seriously, thanks for being here.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Risk is a funny thing because it freaks some people out, me included. But there's also something about it that is so attractive and so tantalizing. Why have you been so drawn to it?
Risk is a funny thing because when people say risk, especially when you frame it that way, the implication is either there's an element of randomness, right, or that's the outcome can be very, very costly because it's either unlikely to pay out or the actual, chance of losing might be really costly. But the way that I see risk is really, if you're able to actually quantify those elements, it's really a price that you pay for an opportunity. The way that I look at risk in that sense, it's not that I'm attracted to these thrill seeks. It's, I think this is worth it, right? I think I can identify these are the probabilities or possibilities, and sometimes I can't, but at least I can map them out. And this is what the possible outcome is. And I'm like, let's do this.
Okay, let's do this. Let's really talk about that. Because what you're saying is you're really talking about what it means for something to be risky. When you started Wall Street Bets, the way you've talked about it is that you said you wanted a place where people could talk about risky ideas and they could talk about it kind of proudly, risky trade ideas. You were enabling other people to take risks. So can you tell us, like, what worries did you have at the time that things potentially could go wrong for them?
You know, my definition, my understanding and my position on risk has evolved, right? It's become clear as the years gone by. And early on, I justified this by saying, well, look, they're all adults. You have to be 18 in order to open up a brokerage. Same thing if you go to a casino, everyone can go through. And when I said I wanted to be able to discuss high risk, I wanted to discuss high risk, high return, right? It wasn't just high risk is throwing your money out the window and having it go away with 100% certainty. This was high risk with the possibility of making money. And those two obviously go hand in hand. There are some that are irresponsible with it, but I can't make myself responsible in much the same way that there's gambling addicts, right? But outside of that, what I start seeing is a learning process, much like the one that I personally went through. I lost tons of money, but I walked away with so much knowledge and understanding and hands-on experience that a textbook can never explain to you.
I want to ask you about someone who sort of counts as your really, really complete opposite, Jack Bogle. He was the founder of Vanguard. He helped popularize the very vanilla, very boring idea that if you're an investor, you can diversify your bets. He ended up popularizing the index fund. How did it feel that you, in some ways, were kind of singularly responsible for changing the way that just millions of people think about investing? What did that feel like?
It was humbling for sure. It was unexpected to see the enthusiasm. If I were to have predicted the outcome of it, it would have been people looking down at this particular type of activity. Secretly, it was almost a goal of mine. But the beauty of it is what conservative investors do, Bogle, Buffett, whatever it might be, is no different than what gamblers that literally go to sit at a roulette table do. The changes in the vision that Wall Street Bets were, it demystified the idea of finance to people that might otherwise think it's just Excel sheets and discounted cash flows.
You also took a different kind of risk and you sued Reddit and you lost. Will you tell us a little bit about what that felt like?
Terrible. Yeah, that was probably in the top 5 riskiest things, if not 3. I get kicked out, and the stubbornness behind Reddit, they never answered. I tried pleading and sorries and threats and back channels and lawyers. They would just be like, no, you're done. They got to a point where they said, no, we're done trying to negotiate. We want to take you to court with this. And I said, all right, well, I guess now I have to actually go to court. And so this is when I decided to countersue them.
So it didn't feel like a risk. It felt like just something you had to do.
I needed to do it for closure. I still had a chip on my shoulder, and I couldn't fully commit to anything. And I'd still kind of look at, every time I'd see Wall Street Bets on the news or people talking about it, it would still have that kind of sour feeling. And so, and I needed to get past that. And I'm like, look, if I lose, I lose. And then it is what it is. And it would have been the fight of the century for me, or my lifetime for me. But
but then I can be at peace. Right?
Is that how you feel now? Are you at peace?
Unfortunately not, because it's not over yet. I would have liked for the judge to have been like, no, dude, you lose and it's over. You know, I don't want to comment too much on the legal side of things, but the judge, let's just say they left plenty of room for maneuvering. So unfortunately, it's not over.
I was told, I really don't know what it is. I was told you brought an object, I think, that maybe encapsulates risk. I think Natasha, my colleague, is gonna pass it to us, I do believe. What is this? Okay. All right. Tell us about this guy.
You're familiar with this?
Yeah. Remind me.
So this is from a meme, right? It says, "This is fine." It's a little dog, and this encapsulates so much of both my life and my ability to handle emotions, especially with the volatility of markets, but also life in general. It gives you so many ups and downs and so many ways to go through it. Oftentimes, when faced with adversity, my composure resembles this. It's like, yeah, don't worry about it.
Can I see him?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, this is mine now. Jamie, thank you so much for being here. Loved having you.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for having me.
We have more risk coming up next. When executives across corporate America want to take a little risk or manage it, they often turn to Wall Street. And there is no entity on Wall Street with a more interesting relationship to risk, including Wall Street bets, than the company Goldman Sachs. And when I think about Goldman, which I do often because I'm a Wall Street reporter, my mind often turns to Maeve Duvally. Maeve is a longtime media executive and until recently was a managing director at Goldman. The truth of the matter is, we have a cordial relationship, but a kind of antagonistic one because it's my job to report on Wall Street's money and power, and it's her job to push back. Recently, I finished her wonderful memoir, Maeve Rising, which is an account of her journey from being a lonely and angry person to the woman who is sitting at this table with me right now. Maeve Duvally, welcome.
Max, thanks for having me. You know, I would say we don't have a antagonistic relationship. I would say that we've locked horns through the years.
Okay,
is that a better characterization?
I think that's a better characterization, but I'm going to ask you in just a couple of minutes about all kinds of risks that you have taken, personally and professionally.
Sure.
But I feel like we should start first things first.
Yep.
Why is risk, which is really, I mean, it's just a fancy way of saying basically the things that can go wrong. Why is risk so important to the work that happens on Wall Street?
Well, from a market perspective, obviously managing market risk, managing operational risk that somebody pushes a button they're not supposed to, and the trade that happens is bigger than it was supposed to be. Those are obvious risks. And there's also kind of macro risk, right? That a central bank does something that people weren't expecting. But the kind of risk that I manage, and incidentally, everybody at Goldman Sachs is taught they have to manage, is reputational risk.
Okay, so I want to talk about 2018. I think my favorite page of your book. You put on makeup at the office for the first time. What I really want to ask about is, like, tell me about the day. Like, what do you remember in full about that day in 2018?
Well, it was the day of the Knight Bagehot Fellowship dinner, which you've probably been to. Knight Bagehot Fellowship is a fellowship for mid-career financial journalists at Columbia University. I'm a alumni of that program and also on the board of Knight Bagehot Fellowship. It's really a nice gathering. I usually look forward to the dinner, but sometime early that afternoon, I literally had this overwhelming feeling and desire that I needed to wear makeup to the event that evening. And once I had that thought, I couldn't get it out of my mind. And I bolted out the door and walked a third of a mile to the closest Sephora and bought a bunch of makeup, which I put on at the end of the day. And I went to that dinner with some makeup on for the first time.
You put on the makeup, you end up kind of negotiating with yourself. And you say to yourself that you basically have this barrel of femininity, and you think, like, should I just keep the lid on? Should I just keep the lid on? What would you have risked if you had done that?
I think that would have been impossible, but if I did that, I would have been miserable.
I was wondering when I read your book how it felt to kind of risk your male privilege. You were risking your male privilege in a male-dominated industry.
I'm certain I had male privilege, and I'm certain through the years I exercised male privilege, but I wasn't really consciously aware of it. And to be perfectly honest, it's not something that really matters to me.
When it's time for you to choose a name, you pick one that means she who intoxicates.
Yeah.
Which blew me away when I read it, because months before, you stopped drinking. Stopped drinking. Why did you quit?
Well, I had a series of progressively bad bottoms. My last bottom, which was in January of 2018, I holed myself up in an apartment. I only left to get alcohol. I drank around the clock, and I made an attempt on my life. So if I continued drinking, I'm convinced that I would have killed myself. After that episode, I made a decision that I wanted to live. And I knew if I wanted to live, I had to stop drinking.
Look, we have a professional relationship, so part of me feels like it's hard to say this, but it's also hard not to say it. I'm glad you made that decision. A lot of people who are miserable, they don't get out of their misery.
Yeah.
They stay there.
So the reality is there are a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics in the world, and the vast majority of them do not get sober and do not get clean, and they die alcoholic and addict deaths. That's the reality. So those of us who have made it to recovery, don't take it for granted, number one, and two, realize that it was a gift. And it's a gift that has to be nourished all the time, because if you take it for granted, you're going to wind up right back on the street.
When you came out, you got, I think, literal bouquets from traders at Goldman. I think you got these very warm notes from people. I think you got phone calls.
Yeah.
Those were from traders, and they were not from investment bankers. And you write in the book with clarity, investment bankers were quiet. I was so surprised by that. Can you explain that? Why did that happen?
I think probably some of my relationships with investment bankers were shallower than I thought. And I think investment bankers are very good at having really expansive relationships kind of across a wide group of people. But, maybe some of those relationships aren't as deep as they would appear.
I love that you're accusing investment bankers writ large of a certain kind of interpersonal shallowness.
I'm not sure I said it exactly that way.
That is exactly as you said it. No. I'm hoping that you'll...
You're not going to put words in my mouth, are you?
Well, I'm the interviewer now.
Yeah.
You know, I asked you earlier about male privilege. Coming out as trans in the milieu of, first of all, New York City, where we are, but also a corporation which I'm sure, as I'm also keenly aware, has a lot of pressures too. Can you talk, if you want to at all, about, I don't know, maybe